I need to remind myself to switch this on. I want to see how many I'm going to do today. I bet it's going to be shorter today.
I hope so. It was like, you had to stand up since 7 till.
The one I did on the 26th, I think 3,200 thereabout steps. Because it was 4 hours.
It's not the steps, you just had to stand.
But it was good exercise.
You're right. So you can do.
Oh yeah, we can share. Yeah, that was a good idea. That last time, but
Just
it
stand
came a bit late. It was
start singing. So about
please stand for the Chair of Thanet District Council.
Good evening, councillors and officers of the council and members of the press and public. I welcome you to this council meeting. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices via the stairs, either through the security doors to my right or opposite the lifts in the foyer. Please do not use the lifts. Please assemble in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise when it's deemed safe to return to the chamber. I would advise that if filming takes place, anyone in attendance in the public areas may have their image captured. I urge anyone filming proceedings to avoid filming members of the public, particularly if there are children present. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? Thank you. Any member of the public who objects to the possibility of being filmed may wish to take this opportunity to leave the meeting. Any filming or recording will not be permitted for any item of business where exempt or confidential information is considered following the exclusion of the press and public from the meeting. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. Hello at home. Would everyone present please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and they are not used to make or receive phone calls whilst this meeting is in progress. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I have received apologies from these councillors: Evans, Dennis, Green, Paulmore, Towning, Pressland. Are there any more, please? Apologies for absence. Councillor Dawson. Councillor Pugh is arriving late, thank you. Councillor Curry.
Apologies from Councillor Barlow and Councillor Britcher.
Councillor Barlow and Britcher, thank you. Anybody else? No, all good. Minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the previous meeting of the council held on the 26th of February 2026 be approved and signed as a correct record. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Do councillors agree? Thank you. Announcements. I've received no announcements. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please? Okay, I'm going to go round individually. You first, Bayford.
Yeah, I understand that members of Broadstairs and St Peter's Town Council must abstain, declare an interest in item 5A.
Is that you? Is that you?
I am a member.
Okay, thank you. Who's next along the line? Thank you.
Yeah, so same with me, Chair, member of Broadstairs Town Council, and item 5A.
Thank you. Turn your mic off, please, Councillor Bayford.
Sorry.
I'm just going round. Please wait.
Sorry. Yes, also a member of Broadstairs.
Thank you. Councillor Nichols, going round at the back there. Hello.
Councillor Mons, Broadstairs Town Council.
Councillor Munns, thank you. Councillor Garner, you too?
Me too.
Okay. Going round the hoop. Now I'm on the front row here. Councillor Bright, same
Yes,
thing.
item 5A, same reason.
Thank you.
Chair, I'm not a member of Broadstairs Town Council. I'd like to declare an interest in the leaders' report, item 9, as the leader, as a member of the Ramsgate Neighbourhood Board, but I do have dispensation from the Standards Committee to remain and participate, which is just as well, really, isn't it?
Thank you. Going round to the back row, Councillor Bright.
Yep, item 5A. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Right. Thank you, Councillor Ruka. Petitions. 2 petitions have been received in accordance with Council Procedural 12. So, first one then, we're going straight into petition regarding Piermont Park. The Council's response to the petition is outlined in the report. So sorry. Here we go then. We've closed the door. They can't possibly hear. The petition organiser, Lorraine Williams, will present the petition as it has been signed by over 1,500 people. Miss Williams, where are you? Oh, there you are. Come to the front. Thank you. And you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. It seems a great shame that TDC elected representatives who are also part of Broadstairs and St Peter's Town Council have been dismissed and their insights will not be heard by their fellow councillors in this discussion. We're grateful for the support of the Town Council who have enabled us to hold several public meetings on this matter and have listened carefully to the community, and we understand they're going to be submitting a bid for this site imminently, which we hope will be successful. Our petition has actually been signed by more than 2,000 people who know and care about the park. While we focused on getting signatures from Thanet residents, we spoke to many other people who expressed a view, not just Broadstairs residents, people from across Thanet and visitors from near and far, including from overseas, all of whom were stunned to hear the District Council's plan, given the location of the depot and the access issues. After TDC's own decision to refuse your own planning application for the site because it can only be accessed via the protected open space of the park, which raised concerns for safety and waste disposal, the decision to advertise the site on the open market was surprising. Officers and councillors have stated that it's their belief that although the council itself turned down planning permission, a determined developer would push to achieve it. How this can be deemed to be a reasonable position we're struggling to comprehend. We think any such developer would need to have an exceptional appetite for risk. Firstly, the land is indentured, with a statutory trust linked to the Public Health Act saying it can only be used as part of the pleasure grounds, and the beneficiaries of this trust are the public. You can read a copy of the covenant on the Friends of Piermont Park website. We've been told that the council does not think anyone has the resources to try and enforce that indenture. That may be so. We have had a number of people offering us money to fund a legal case, but naturally we don't want to go down that route. And we don't currently know how expensive it might be, so it might not be practical. But we note that Dr. Day won a similar case against Shropshire Council. Kent Gardens Trust agree with us that the intention of the covenant was for the land to be used for pleasure gardens and public walks, with no buildings allowed except those related to that purpose, such as those currently on the site, which can store gardening and events equipment. They support our position that the depot should be used as it was intended when the old Urban District Council acquired it, and we jointly deplore any move to reduce the provision of public parks. We note Thanet District Council fully supported and implemented the re-greening of the car park at Dalby Square after Kent Gardens Trust highlighted the covenant laid down by Lord Dalby, however you say it, to the effect that the whole area should be for the people of Cliftonville to use as a pleasure green space. Why would TDC do the opposite in Piermont Park by refuting the long-standing covenant there? Why should the people of and visitors to Broadstairs be treated more poorly than the people of Cliftonville? The irony of the officer's report in your agenda packs, insinuating that to fail to sell off the service depot for the park will lead to other council assets deteriorating, when the condition of Piermont Park has deteriorated so much since this asset has been disused and left to become derelict, is staggering. We've spoken to the town council gardeners, one of whom is ex-TDC, who worked in the depot site for 30 years before switching to work for the town council approximately 2 years ago. They tell us the land is ideally suited to support the management of the park, and they're almost desperate, and that's the actual word that was used, because they're struggling so much to do their jobs while being denied access to the depot, which is right where they need it to be and ideally suited to their needs for equipment storage, composting and growing, has so much potential for additional community-minded uses. We just propose that TDC should work with the Town Council to agree a deal whereby ownership of the site can be transferred to the Town Council, who can then bring in the gardening team, work with community groups, bring it back into use. It could be, as well as gardening, you can use for community events, a space hub, opportunities for volunteers, educational opportunities, preserving wildlife, practicing horticulture, selling books, running classes, all the sorts of things that should be happening in a well-used, well-cared-for park, such as our community deserves to have. Such uses would enhance the park as a whole and improve the fabric of our town. For residents and visitors alike, everyone we've spoken to has expressed sadness at its current state and expressed their hopes it can be better maintained again in the near future. The Government Circular General Disposal Consent England 2003 is the primary mechanism for bypassing the best consideration, best value duty without specific Secretary of State approval, and it applies if the Council considers that the disposal is likely to contribute to the promotion or improvement of the economic, social or environmental well-being of its area, which of course it would and must do. The park is an incredibly precious resource. The depot cannot be separated from the park. Our TDC are currently talking about spending some pride and place money on the park as a whole, which will certainly be welcome. We want our fountain back. We want improved access, plantings and flower beds, but the idea that this can be done without including the depot as part of the plan for ongoing maintenance is just staggeringly short-sighted. Under the Open Spaces Act, TDC have a statutory duty to protect the public enjoyment of the park and responsibility for health and safety, and to ensure prevention of conflict between vehicles and pedestrians in the park. Across decades of case law, courts consistently hold that councils hold parks in trust for the public. They can't treat them as ordinary assets. I just also say, since TDC is ceasing to exist soon, we also urge you to remember that the government has warned councils against selling significant assets, with the general directive being to protect public ownership. Your community and the town council are telling you this depot is significant and it should be kept in public ownership. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, do members have any comments? Councillor Manners.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm very pleased to see such strength of feeling behind this petition, with over 2,000 residents asking the council to pause and reconsider what is seen as selling off the family silver. That alone should give us cause to reflect carefully before proceeding. Much is made in the TDC report of legal constraint, specifically the duty to achieve best consideration under Section 123 of the Local Government Act, but that is not my understanding of the full picture. It's my understanding that the same legal framework explicitly does allow disposal below open market value, where there is the demonstrable social, environmental or economic benefit. That is not an exception in theory. It is something councils across the country do in practice using the general disposal consent. A cursory online search throws up numerous case studies demonstrating the fact. So the issue before us is not whether a community transfer is legally possible, because it clearly is. The real question is whether the council has properly explored that option and whether it is willing to justify it. I'm concerned that the report leans heavily on risk, legal risk, audit risk, without equally setting out how these risks can be managed, as they routinely are elsewhere. That risks presenting members and the public with only a partial picture. I'm also concerned about the valuation figure. £475,000 is cited, yet the site has no proper road access, there are clear environmental sensitivities and significant constraints on development, not least of all demonstrated by the planning permission application that was recently rejected by the council. It's not obvious to me that this reflects a realistic, achievable market value. And if that valuation is overstated, then the entire argument about foregone capital and the impact on reserves needs to be treated with caution. Which brings me to the wider point. We're told that capital receipts are essential, and in the current financial position of the council, that may well be true. But I'm concerned that we do not treat community asset disposal as a means to support short-term financial pressures. We must be careful not to drift into a position where we're selling community assets to balance the books in the short term. Once assets like this are gone, they are gone forever. So given the legal flexibility that does exist, the level of public interest, and the questions around valuation, I do not believe we are yet in a position to say that all reasonable options have been fully and independently tested. For that reason, I urge that this matter be referred back to Cabinet and that separate legal opinion be sought on the scope for a lawful community disposal at undervalue, alongside a robust reassessment of the site's true market value with a view to eventual sale to Broadstairs Town Council, who have a proven and enviable track record in preserving community assets for the benefit of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. I find myself in the surprising position of agreeing wholeheartedly with everything that Councillor Manners has said, which must be a first. As he has highlighted the broader issues and the legal issues and the way that this council appears to rely on concerns about audit, which other councils seem to take a more relaxed view of, I'll just look at the more local issues. I understand that Broadstairs and St Peters Town Council first expressed interest in taking on the old depot in October 2024. I believe the Town Council felt the TDC would look on this request favourably because they'd recently started to take on a team to take on TDC's gardening responsibilities in Victoria Gardens and other parts of town who needed a home. But it was disappointing that a few weeks later the Town Council was informed that TDC had decided to pursue a different course of action and had submitted a planning application to build housing on the site. We know what happened with that. Around this point, the community got involved to campaign against this plan to build in the park. The petition was launched and eventually the planning application was refused. There was then an opportunity for TDC to re-engage with the Town Council about the future of the depot. It's a shame this opportunity wasn't taken up and that the depot was put up for sale on the open market. The Town Council left to bid against others who may be potential developers looking to build on the site. We are where we are, but we hope that with news today that TDC has made a £250,000 profit through the resale of Retort House, and in view of the ongoing gardening support that's provided by the Town Council's team, the leader will make sure that any bid put forward by the Town Council for the depot will be positively received, and a deal made to the satisfaction of all, especially the residents who've worked so hard to progress this excellent petition. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you, Chair. So Cabinet did approve the disposal of Piermont Park depot at its meeting on 25th of September 2025. Cabinet approved the disposal of Piermont Park depot at its meeting on 25th of September 2025 as it's no longer required by the council as a depot. It was specifically agreed that the sale should exclude the access road and it should not be sold by way of public auction. It was therefore agreed that disposal would be by private treaty, with the council inviting proposals from potential bidders. This process enables proposals to come forward that bring social or environmental benefits, such as any proposals that Broadstairs and St Peters Town Council may choose to submit. It also allows these bids to be considered alongside any other proposals submitted. Under the Local Government Act 1972, Section 123, Thanet District Council has a statutory duty to achieve best consideration, as has been said, for its assets. The site is currently being marketed at £475,000. This capital is earmarked to fund the council's property enhancement programme. If this £475,000 is not realised, specific refurbishment projects for other council-owned buildings or public realm improvements in the district will likely be deferred or cancelled due to lack of funding. Transferring land to a town council for free or below market value requires a general disposal consent justification.
proving that the end of value is offset by specific social or environmental benefits. The council currently cannot robustly prove that a gardening hub provides £475,000 worth of public benefit. It faces the risk of a legal challenge or public interest report from external auditors for failing in its fiduciary duty to the taxpayers of the entire district, not just Broadstairs. The petition states that the site is home to all kinds of wildlife, including a pond which may have newts. However, the independent specialist ecological appraisal undertaken in 2024 confirmed that there is no natural pond on the site. There is a small man-made stone washing area previously used by the nursery to wash plant pots. The preliminary ecological appraisal determined this feature has poor suitability for great crested newts. It is approximately 1 to 2 feet deep, almost entirely filled with leaf litter, and contains very poor water quality with no vertebrates found. The PEA concludes great crested newts are unlikely to be present. The petition suggests commercial development would destroy the site's rich biodiversity. The site is predominantly hard standing, with buildings and ruderal vegetation growing through cracks. Under the Environment Act 2021, any development must deliver 10% measurable net gain in biodiversity. A development of the site would be legally required to deliver an enhancement of biodiversity.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. It's not often that I don't have a lot to say, but I can't actually say better than Councillor Austin and Councillor Manners have stated. I would like to ask a question, and that's, we seem to be embedded on this £475,000 valuation, which from research that I've done would seem to be rather excessive, perhaps pie in the sky, but I'm not a valuer. Do we have an independent RICS valuation? Because other professionals are saying that there is nothing like that 475 as a valuation on this. Let's remember this site is potentially tainted by lack of access as well. Although it's written into the agreement that the access road exists, it's part of the park and will never be part of the tenure of the land. So I would question that 475,000 as perhaps a bit pie in the sky and looking to fill the council's black hole rather than a reasonable figure on it. And let's remember that depot, as has been excellently stated as part of the petition, was part of the functioning of the park. And if people want that to, and those that used it are saying it's an integral part of that, then that value has to be taken into account. This isn't just, a grab of the town council's proposals should be considered here, I believe, and the added social value of those.
Thank you. Councillor Matterface.
Thank you, Chair. As the only Broadstairs councillor still standing in the chamber, I'd just like to ask, whatever the outcome, should it be sold on the open market or whether a transfer is made to the town council for a financial return, I would request that, if possible, that income is that revenue is invested in Broadstairs, because historically, I know we're going to get some Pride in Place money, but historically, Broadstairs has always lost out when government grants are. And I think there must be projects in Broadstairs that the town council could take on, community groups could take on, that would benefit from a bit of an injection of capital on the assumption this site is sold on the open market, whether it's for 475, whether it's for a lot less. But it would be great if we could say to Broadstairs, we've sold the land because it was something we had to do, but the money is going to come back into Broadstairs to help with some of the projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wing.
I really do find it quite distasteful that we are pitting the selling of an asset in one area against the possible refurbishment of assets in another area. And I obviously represent Central Harbour, when we've got the beautiful Ellington Park that benefits not only at my ward, Ramsgate people and people further afield. And we've benefited from a large amount of income coming in, as has Margate. And I always feel sorry for Broadstairs and the villages because they constantly get overlooked. And I am a member of the planning committee, and I can clearly remember seeing one of the original historic documents, maps, that clearly indicated that that lump of land was part of the curtilage of the listed building, and so it is protected from sale. I really do think that Broadstairs Town Council have also done some wonderful things with their gardeners. Your flower beds are the best in Thanet, and that's all down to Broadstairs Town Council and the huge number of volunteers and their gardeners. And I think the residents' speech, the petition, has clearly demonstrated the social and environmental value of turning what we, TDC, have left to rot for a number of years can be turned into something and maximise outputs, basically for the people of Broadstairs, but also for the people of Thanet as a whole.
Councillor Everett.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Ms Williams for her petition and for articulate explanation of the case. And obviously we do listen to all the feedback that we've had from Broadstairs and other residents about this, and we understand that the park is a cherished asset. I have to say though, this is a depot, it is not part of the park, and even in the presentation by the speaker it was referred to as a depot. It's a depot, it's not a community asset, it hasn't had public access for many years, and there is no legal case to treat Broadstairs Town Council as a special purchaser. We can't hand it over to Broadstairs Town Council. If Broadstairs Town Council wants to buy the depot, then they have to make a bid in an open process, and it has to be an open process. That's the law. I do wonder why some members feel able to come to council and make statements which, if they attended the briefing on Tuesday night, they would know the officers clearly explained to them are not valid. They didn't have the argument with the professional officers. They didn't have an exchange of views there. They listen to what the officers say, and then they come to council and say things which completely contradict the advice they've received from officers. And they do that for the benefit of the public gallery. That's the only reason they do it. We've been asked if there's a RICS valuation. There is a RICS valuation. But actually what the valuation is doesn't really matter, because if nobody wants to pay $475,000, nobody will pay it. Doesn't matter what the valuation says. And if nobody else makes an offer for it, and Broadstairs Town Council make a low offer for it, then obviously Broadstairs Town Council will win, won't they? So it's either worth $475,000 or it's not. But what the valuation says is of no particular moment. Covenants can only be enforced by the people who they benefit. It's not about how much money you've got and whether you can afford to go to court. You have to be a beneficiary of the covenant in order to go to court and make the case. We don't think there is anybody available who's a beneficiary of the covenant. If you've got someone, by all means put them forward. But we don't think there's anyone out there. You know, I understand that people want to rely on the decision of the planning committee. It's been asked how we can disagree with the planning committee. Well, we can disagree with the planning committee. I wasn't part of that planning committee and I have a different view. But again, if I'm wrong and the planning decision was robust, then I don't know what we're worried about, because if it goes to appeal, obviously the planning inspectorate will agree with the planning committee. I think the planning inspectorate will laugh at the decision of the planning committee, because I think it was a political decision that wasn't made on planning grounds. And I think everybody on this council knows that, if they're honest. But you can rely on it if you think it's valid. Obviously, we have listened to everything that people have said. The challenge for this council is that we do have a multi-million-pound repair bill for our assets, just to keep them watertight. And it's our job to make sure that we do that. And the fact is, we've always used money from assets in one area to spend in another. That happens in every council in the country, and it happens in Thanet.
Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of my comments have already been covered by the other sort of councillors. My thing is, you know, each asset it obviously should be taken on an individual basis, and obviously members of the public obviously feel very strongly about this asset. Broadstairs Council obviously have a huge track record of looking after assets in the community. So on that basis, obviously other assets like the Granville Theatre was put out under sort of as a community value. There must be other options that they can explore to see, you know, I know the leader was saying, regards to the valuation, is the valuation the amount that's been put up for? Is that what the valuation states? So obviously, I haven't seen the valuation. That is the valuation of what it states. Looking at sort of other options, is there an option for Broadstairs Council to buy it from you? There is, yeah, on that. Okay, thank you.
Councillor W. Scobie.
Thank you, Chair. And again, some of the comments I wanted to make have already been made by the leader and others. But I think we all welcome a petition coming forward and understanding where people are feeling on a local issue. I do have to point out that the hyperbole behind this, labelled Save Piermont Park, I think goes a little bit too far. Again, as the leader said, we're talking about a depot here. I don't think anybody in this council has ever suggested that any parts of the park, as stands at the moment, are up for sale. And I think suggesting like that may drive petition signatures, may raise concern in the community. But I don't think it's actually really fair, because if anybody thinks that this is an easy decision, that officers are sat at the council and cabinet members and members of the ruling administration are sitting here going, oh, that'd be a great asset to sell off, doesn't really understand the debates and stuff that happen and the difficult decisions. And as Councillor Everett said, we have a number of assets that the council owns, far too many to even start repairing them. And there does have to be prioritisation. That is the reality. And it's happened all the time that I've been on the council. And I actually went to the depot and stood in the rain with Councillor Garner as he explained to me why this was a great piece of community assets. And I remember sort of stood there going, it is concreted over. It's a number of old buildings that are sort of leaning to. I understand, due to its location, how this could be useful for the park in the future. But as Councillor Everett said, describing this as a vital piece of community asset, I'd be confused about it. And to be honest, speaking as a Broadstairs taxpayer, if Broadstairs Town Council did go and borrow £500,000 to go and buy this piece of land, I would be questioning if there were other parts of Broadstairs assets or part of the community that would benefit from that funding. And I would certainly be questioning that. The legal position is clear. And as Councillor Everett said, officers have given their advice. It's fun for councillors, and this has happened a number of times with opposition councillors, assuming that they know more than highly trained officers that have been working in this space for a number of years. But the reality is the advice is clear. And the final thing I would say is where I think my personal views on this petition come up against this is that if we follow what the petition is asking for to stop the process, that means that Broadstairs Town Council can't bid for it. And it goes back into the process of, potentially this asset will start again with this disposal, or it comes back into the council's main list. Now, let's just walk that through for a little bit. If that asset is sold now, we as a council get to decide what happens to that money and what assets that goes into. And there's been some very clear spend on assets, toilets, lifts being reopened, where we've repurposed that money. If this goes back now, who is going to make that decision? A unitary council encompassing Ashford? Do we really think that they're going to take the care that we're taking now to consider local people's views? Or are they going to, as soon as they get control, sell that asset and spend it completely somewhere else in a much larger unitary area? So, Chair, I understand where the petitions are coming from, but we do have to make choices here.
Councillor Manners.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry. You've already spoken. I'm so sorry. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. It does genuinely feel as if a large number of councillors who I know have been in briefings and I know have been in council meetings have either completely forgotten all of the information that we've spoken about, or more likely are deliberately avoiding acknowledging that they know exactly what they're talking about at this point, and they are making out a situation to be very, very different. We have talked at a briefing and in many, many council meetings about the fact that any kind of social value has to be something that can be financially demonstrated. So it has to be something that shows that a TDC function will effectively be funded by that social value. That has to be something that you can demonstrate. It isn't a simple case of this would be nice if, or we think that this would help the community. It can't even be we think it would help with health and social care, because that's KCC. It has to be something that directly links to a TDC function. So to have councillors here tonight saying, but social value, whilst completely neglecting to mention the fact that they have been told repeatedly that it has to be financially demonstrated, is the worst type of politicking, because it's completely misleading people who are watching this. Everyone would love to be able to fund community assets. There isn't a single councillor in here who wouldn't want to preserve everything that they possibly could. But the reality is that this is not something cherished that has been fought for years. This was completely abandoned until, with no interest whatsoever, until pretty much the point that it went onto the disposal list. It's 70% concrete. It is not a biodiversity sanctuary. Any development that happens there has to improve the biodiversity, so there would be no loss of biodiversity. And although I fully understand why the community feel the way that they do, the reality is that this petition has been put forward via social media post saying the council is going to build on the park. There has never been a proposal to build on the park, ever. And yet, yes, you have. And that has been spread wide across this period. I have no issue with debating the ins and outs of every single council decision and how we make it. I do have issue with things not being factual. I do have issue with things being portrayed in a particular way just to get political grounding or just to get grounding for an issue. The reality is this is an unused depot. It has been an unused depot for a very, very long time. And much as we might like to preserve it, the fact is that the whole of Thanet needs improvement in many, many different services. And there are many things we can do for Broadstairs, but this is not one of them.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Chair. Can you confirm, please, will TDC take the social value into account if Broadstairs Town Council make a bid on it? Thank you.
Okay, anybody else want to speak? I'm sorry, we had a question and one person speak. Sorry? Well, you haven't had an answer to a question. It's that I'm inviting comments here, not questions. It's comments we're having here. Anybody else? Okay. As you may know, this will be referred to Cabinet. Do councillors agree? Sorry? Let's have one more. Do councillors agree?
Okay, Chair,
okay, well,
on a point of order, can we be clear, because it's not my understanding that it's automatically referred to Cabinet. I thought that that was a decision for Council.
One moment.
Can I confirm there's a little bit of ambiguity in the Constitution, but having looked into it further, we're really clear that there does need to be a vote as to whether or not to refer this matter to Cabinet for further consideration. Thank you.
So we go to a vote to refer this petition
Point of order, Chair.
Yeah.
I mean, in the report it says there are recommendations or there's alternative options. Surely somebody's got to propose a recommendation for us to vote on it. I mean, it's pretty clear in the report. Nobody's proposed it. There you go.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Fellows, you've proposed. Thank you. Can we have a seconder, please? Thank you. Councillor Kopp.
So what's the recommendation?
The recommendation is to refer to Cabinet. Yes? Yes. So, those in... Yeah, we okay? Those in favour to refer to Cabinet, please show your hands. Okay. Those against? Thank you. Any abstentions? That vote's lost. Thank you. So we move on. Item 5B. Yeah, hang on. Yes, we do want to bring the members back. Yeah, we do.
So what's happening with the
Okay, hold, Charles, can you hold them outside for a moment, please? We're going to let them in now.
Chair, point of order. In the report, it says alternative options 4.2 to acknowledge the petition but take no further action. Shouldn't we vote on that?
One moment. Can you hold them, please? Just hold them. Just stay at the door, please, Broadstairs. Stay at the door. Stay at the door. I might have to ask you to leave.
Chair, just to make it simple, can I just propose that we acknowledge the petition so at least it isn't ignored?
That is 4.2.
Yeah, so 4 point, exactly. Can I just propose that?
You're proposing that we acknowledge the petition? Yeah. Okay, that's proposed. Can we have a seconder, please? Anyone you like? Can we have a show of hands, please? We've acknowledged the petition. Thank you. We've acknowledged the petition. Thank you. Only acknowledging. That's it. Thank you very much.
That's that item.
Charles, third time lucky. Let them in quickly. Thank you, Council, for your help on that. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, councillors. With your permission then, we're going forward here. Petition regarding Dreamland. The council's response to the petition is outlined in the report before members. The petition organiser, Carol Messenger, where are you? Would you like to come to the front? She will present the petition as it's been signed by over 1,500 people. Miss Messenger, you have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the Council, as you know, my name is Carol Messenger, speaking on behalf of the Dreamland Heritage Trust. I'm here to present a public petition concerning the future of the Grade 2 listed scenic railway at Dreamland in Margate. The petition to date has gathered 3,500 signatures in just 8 weeks, and support continues to grow. Around 10% of those signatures come from international supporters, demonstrating that the concern of the scenic railway extends far beyond the local area and reflects its global heritage significance. This rapid response shows the depth of public feeling and the importance of this structure to residents, visitors, and heritage supporters alike. The scenic railway is not simply an attraction, it is a heritage structure of exceptional significance. Widely recognised as unique within the United Kingdom and one of very few surviving examples of its type anywhere in the world. It forms part of Margate's historic identity, part of its skyline and part of its cultural memory. Whilst the structure is privately owned, assets of this importance are commonly understood to be held in stewardship for the nation. Ownership carries legal rights, but also responsibilities, because such places form part of the shared cultural inheritance of the public and of future generations. The petition does not seek to challenge commercial decision-making or legitimate The petition does not seek to challenge commercial decision-making or legitimate health and safety considerations. Public safety must always come first. Instead, it asks the Council, will you ensure that the Grade 2 listed structure, which has benefited from substantial public investment, is properly safeguarded for the long term? The announcement that the scenic railway has been retired from operation has caused significant public concern and uncertainty. Petitioners wish to understand what this means in practical terms and what the future is envisaged for the structure. Accordingly, the petition calls upon the Council to clarify several matters. Firstly, that any change in use, alteration or intervention affecting the scenic railway will require listed building consent and a rigorous heritage assessment. Grade 2 star status is reserved for particularly important buildings of more than special interest and provides strong statutory protection. Secondly, that a conservation management plan be prepared for the scenic railway. Such plans are standard tools in heritage stewardship and are typically commissioned by the owner, often in consultation with the local planning authority and heritage bodies. They set out how a structure's historic significance will be preserved, maintained and respected over time, and normally included detailed documentation of works undertaken, ensuring that any changes are properly recorded and understood. Petitioners consider this is a reasonable and proportionate measure for an asset of this importance and ask that any such plan be subject to public consultation. Thirdly, that the Council actively monitor the condition of the structure and be prepared to use its statutory powers, if necessary, to prevent neglect or deterioration. Heritage can be lost not only through demolition, but through gradual decline. Fourthly, that meaningful engagement take place with the public, recognised heritage organisations and other stakeholders before any future proposal affecting the scenic railway are considered. Given the level of public interest and public funding historically invested in Dreamland, petitioners believe open dialogue is essential. Fifthly, that clarification be sought from relevant funding bodies as to whether the retirement of the scenic railway from operation aligns with the objectives and conditions attached to previous grant funding. Members, heritage value lies not only in physical form, but also in lived experiences. Structures associated with the movement, sound, and communal enjoyment derive much of their meaning from being experienced by the public. Whilst preservation of the fabric is vital, many petitioners believe that the structure's significance is mostly fully realised when it functions as is intended, where this is safe and feasible. The scenic railway has survived fire, closure and rebuilding. It stands today as a powerful symbol of continuity and resilience for Margate. This petition is constructive in intent. It does not demand a particular outcome, rather it asks for clarity, transparency and assurance that decisions after this exceptional structure will properly reflect its heritage, significance and the public interest. Petitioners therefore seek answers to several reasonable questions. I am coming to the end. What future is envisaged for the scenic railway? What safeguards exist to ensure its continued preservation? How will its condition be monitored over time? What opportunities will be there for public and expert input into decisions affecting it? And what pathway exists for a return to operation in the future? The Dreamland Heritage Trust stands ready to work collaboratively with the council, the owners, heritage bodies and the community to help secure a sustainable long-term future for this remarkable asset. Members, this petition represents thousands of people, locally, nationally and internationally, asking for stewardship worthy of a structure of exceptional importance. We respectfully ask that those voices be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open the floor to comments. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank the Dreamland Heritage Trust for their research and such a thorough presentation of the petition. We hear a lot in this chamber at times about people claiming things are of national significance, which some of us raise our eyebrows at times, but this is not just national, it is, as we've heard, international significance. We hear there's nothing we can do. Well, I think there's plenty we can do, and we need to be supporting the residents and those that wish to protect what is a Grade 2 star listed asset, and let's not forget that. And I'll come back to that. However, and without wishing to take anything away from my colleague, there are various measures being taken and efforts to engage with the current owners in order to negotiate some sort of sensible future for the thing, and also to make sure that it is looked after. And I want to raise something that's become quite apparent having visited this site in the last week. If this is listed, it should be maintained in the condition it was listed in. And I think we're missing a trick, because if you look back at all old images of the roller coaster, scenic railway, call it what you wish, it was painted and the wood was preserved. What was put there in the last 5 or 6 years following the fire has not been treated, painted or preserved. It is therefore not compliant with the listing, and therefore I do believe that we have grounds to go back to them and hold them to account, because this is designed in obsolescence. That park, my colleague and I visited last week. We're coming up to Easter, and they claim to be a functioning leisure park. There was 2 men working on one ride. No sideshows, no act. That should be a hub of activity at the moment, if they had any intention of it functioning properly. No. So there is an agenda. I'm quite prepared to say it, and I think we need to all bite the bullet, support people and do the right thing here. But there is, I believe, grounds for us to hold them to account, because they have not maintained it in its listed condition. So perhaps we can give some thought to doing the right thing here, because it is absolutely vital. None of the story makes sense. The wood's 5 or 6 years old. It's not that it was described as this 100-year-old asset has come to the end of its service life. I've never heard such rubbish in all my life. If it's rotten after 5 years, then maybe it's because it wasn't restored properly. So there's questions that need answering here, and I think just to put our hands in the air and say wasn't us governor and there's nothing we can do is not good enough from this authority. And by the way, the health and safety checks that they make such a fuss about, the 5 hours, has always been necessary. Every day that ride's ridden, what it refers to is 3 or 4 people walking the ride and monitoring it. It's not a 5-hour process, it's an hour, or if that depends how many people you divide it by. So we are, I believe, being misled and led up a garden path about why things are how they are, and it's up to us to dig in and get this matter resolved. But certainly, I believe there are good grounds to. Thank you.
Councillor Keane.
Thank you. I fully understand people's feelings about the scenic railway because I'm local and I feel it too. I first volunteered with the Dreamland Expo because I was so keen to see the park come back into action. I then worked 3 seasons at Dreamland, so it's somewhere I'm very familiar with and somewhere I'm very fond of. However, I do take issue with the nothing we can do line, because actually I think we're doing everything we can. We've contacted Historic England, we've been in touch with the National Lottery Heritage Fund, we are looking at the avenues we can pursue, and we will continue doing that. I think we are doing everything we can, but we do take it very seriously. Thank you.
Councillor Scobie, W.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the petition. I was actually 14 years ago, one of the first things I did in politics was do a petition for Dreamland when there was the inquiry, and I think I was in your shoes presenting a similar position to the leader of the council with 3,000 signatures calling for it to be reopened when there was the inquiry. So I completely sympathise with what your aims are here. And listening to your statement, I don't disagree with a word of it, and I don't think there's any councillor in here that disagrees with a word of it. We all want that asset opened. The bit that I disagree with is what TDC can do about it. I understand when you have a private company has taken public funds to open an asset, has now made a decision that we all disagree with. There aren't many ports of call that we can go through, Chair. This is one of the only forums where people can bring petitions, where they can go to their local councillor to bring motions. And that is why we had a motion at the last meeting. There is a question this evening. We've got this petition. I'm sure the leader's going to, I talked about it at the last meeting. I'm sure we'll talk about it again in the future. Cabinet has considered it. Overview and scrutiny has considered it. And the thing that just keeps coming back to is all the advice is saying from the council, from the officers, from the cabinet is, as Councillor Keane said, we're doing everything that we can. So this is where I struggle with an issue like this, is because I think everybody in this room is in agreement, and what we're disagreeing over is how much we're willing something to be true or not. And the truth here is that we do have limited things that we can do. I don't know the merits of what Councillor Davis said in terms of the paint and some of the other suggestions that Carol Messenger made, but I do trust the officers, the people that we put in these positions. I do trust the cabinet that we've got, and I trust that they are doing everything they can. And I believe that both on the trust I have in them, but also why would anybody not want to reopen and have the scenic railway running? Is there a councillor here suggesting that officers have some other view, or the cabinet has some other view as to why they wouldn't be doing everything they can? I don't think that's true. I think we're doing everything that we can, as Councillor Keane said, and I agree with every word, but the reality is we are a small council and we don't have the powers to do some of the things we're being asked to do.
Councillor Manners.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the petition, and I mean, I agree with what's been said mostly in the chamber this evening. Our hands are tied on this. I hope that we will be able to examine what Councillor Davis has suggested with regard to its painting to see whether that gives us any leverage with Sands Heritage to protect the asset. I mean, I think the council's dropped the ball on this with its disposal, and it's coming back and it's biting us now. And as Councillor Scobie says, we have to trust the officers, but I think we also need to trust but verify, and it's the failure to have done that in this instance that means that the asset was sold without the protections it ought to have had. But that's water under the bridge, and as I said, all we can do is use whatever very limited levers we have to try and get Sands Heritage at the table. They do, after all, need to continue doing business in this town, and if they're going to be welcome partners in this town, or welcome in this town, I suggest they up their game a little bit on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alban.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go back on Councillor Davis' point about whether the ride should be painted or whatever. Well, that would have been the case when it was first listed. But obviously, nearly all of that went when it caught fire. So the wood that's there now is probably treated, and that would have been overseen by Historic England in the way it's in the way it's done. Nothing stopping you in looking at that. But I think there's another part of this, and whilst I support the petition, and I think we will do everything that we can, we shouldn't be focusing on Thanet District Council. We should be focusing on them down at Dreamland. They're the people who are not doing it. They're the people who are not using it. They're the people who are sitting there letting it go to whatever it's going to. We can visit on a regular basis. We can see whether or not whether the ride is as it should be. And there was an argument about if the ride's there, then it should be used because that's what it's there for. Well, I would say to that, I don't believe that that's the case. I would say to that, Stevenson's rocket is sitting in a museum somewhere. There's loads of churches, grade 2 star listed churches, which are not used. So you can't force them to actually do that. And we can't force them to use it. We just can't do that. It's up to them. There might be other ways. And I would say to the petitioner, send that petition to them. Send that to Dreamland. Give it to them. Show them how much the public don't like what they're doing. Let's put the pressure on them because shouldn't be here. We'll do whatever we can to try and get that going. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Carol, for the Dreamland Heritage Trust for bringing this petition. The Scenic Railway is more than a roller coaster. It's a living, clanking, rattling monument to the working class way of life. As a ward councillor, I'm furious with Sands Heritage and Live Nation for not responding to this short-sighted, greedy, reckless action that puts profit before people. I'd also like to congratulate Councillor Fellows for stubbornly just turning up and insisting that a letter be hand-delivered, because it seems like we're getting no contact, but Councillor Fellows, fair play to you to actually just doing that. So thank you. And I'd like to, and like others here, I'm interested in the issues raised by Councillor Davis tonight. I have to ask the same questions as I've asked before, though. Has TDC staff or cabinet members spoken to Tom Foxhall, the South East Regional Director for Historic England? I spoke to him a month ago and he did say that there are levers TDC can pull. Have TDC planning enforcement been in touch with Sands Heritage about other concerning issues, such as the Dreamland neon lights that had millions of pounds of investment? Surely a listed status for neon lights should actually involve them being switched on rather than their existence alone. For info, I have reported the neon lights breaching their listed status to planning enforcement a month ago, reference 86838, and have had no response from anyone at TDC. Lastly, third question, have TDC had any expert legal advice listing their options regarding Sands Heritage? I used to live next door to TDC's former heritage officer who has since left TDC, and I know that expert legal advice is required on this issue. So I worry that TDC are not getting expert legal advice. I worry that TDC are ignoring other listed status breaches by Sands Heritage. And I worry that at every opportunity where Sands Heritage have come to TDC with a begging bowl, we have given them everything they wanted. And now our heritage is gone, our taxpayers' money is gone, and really sadly, it looks like the will to address this is gone. Thank you.
Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm slightly confused at this point because that's pretty much the same question that Councillor Yates asked previously with some of the exact wording. So I'll go through it again. Firstly, thank you to everybody who signed the petition and to everybody who loves and values the scenic railway. To list where we are, as it stands currently, as a Cabinet, we have requested all information from Dreamland and Sands Heritage relating to this decision and grant agreements, requested all information from previous funders regarding this decision and grant agreements, called the issue to scrutiny, asked Dreamland to not only provide the required information, but also attend council to discuss their decision with the openness that is wholly warranted, written to central government to request strengthening of laws relating to active usage of listed assets, written to central government to request the enforcement of a viability test when decisions are made not to continue the usage of listed assets. To update on our conversations with central government, especially to address the English heritage point, I wrote in February to confirm the situation around change of use and to ask for the gap in terms of the protection of currently operating listed assets to be closed. I have received a reply to that letter from Baroness Twycross, Minister for Museums, Heritage and Gambling, and both English heritage and central government guidance within that letter makes it clear that we have no powers to enforce operation of the scenic railway, Councillor Yates. To quote, in your letter, you request a review of the importance of operation within listed building status to ensure that structures listed due to the nature of their function and the importance of their utility are protected in terms of operation as well as in the maintenance of the structure. I should explain that listed a building is a decision by the Secretary of State based on whether the building is of special architectural or historical interest. The focus then is on the interest of the building in terms of its physical presence rather than its use. There are many listed buildings which formerly had an operational use, for example, a mill or a factory, but which has now ceased to be in use. It would not be practical to develop a mechanism to ensure that the operational use of a building is protected, because this would be beyond the current provisions set out in governing legislation, the Planning Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act 1990, as well as the practical challenge as to how the operational use would be funded by those who own listed buildings and the extent and suitability to which the listed building would be capable of use. I have replied to this letter and I have asked again for changes to national legislation to protect listed assets which are operational through the means of a viability assessment, which would require publication of both the information and the reasoning that has led to the decision to declare the asset non-viable. To quote directly from my second letter, I accept that this is not a general situation and is a very specific set of circumstances. However, I do not believe that their specificity means that the implications and impact of these decisions are minimal. At the very least, for structures that are listed and functional, provision needs to be made within planning to ensure that evidence relating to viability is provided not only to the local planning authority, but also to the public, so that both residents and authorities have access to factual information and evidence relating to a viability decision, so that the function of a listed public asset cannot be removed simply by quoting the word unviable and refusing to offer or produce any further information relating to that decision. The heritage importance of the scenic railway to Margate and Thanet cannot be overstated, and neither can the importance of transparency and accountability when it comes to the usage of public money. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kay Bright.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing this petition, Ms Messenger. I just wanted to stand because I've been listening with interest to what members have been saying, and I've really got to take issue with Councillor Yates's comment that the will has gone from the council. You'd already heard from Councillor Keane the steps that the council has been taking. You've now heard for the second month in a row this from Councillor Whitehead the steps that this council has taken. I think that just goes to, it's either a kind of opportunity to flex Councillor Yates, or it's a lack of attention to detail that just means that you've picked up last month's agenda and read the same question twice. But I don't think, actually, that we should be making political points off the back of what is a ridiculously damaging imposition to the people of Thanet. And I agree wholeheartedly with what everyone's been saying about the scenic railway's heritage and value. But what I absolutely cannot understand is the lack of value that that Dreamland themselves are giving this. Can anyone else think of another music venue And I know it's a theme park first and foremost in everyone's minds, but as a music venue, it brings thousands and thousands and thousands of people and pounds and probably millions of pounds into Thanet every single year. Can anyone else in this chamber think of another music venue in the UK that has a working scenic railway? I mean, it's missing a trick, and it's just crazy. From my perspective, as someone who does this kind of thing for a living, they are missing an absolute trick in terms of the money they can make from events. I think we need to use this as much as anything else as a tool to make them rethink. So, fully support the petition, and thank you for bringing it.
Anybody else? Councillor Fellows.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Carol for bringing the petition this evening. I really don't want us to fight each other over this. We should be fighting Dreamland. I think fighting each other in the chamber is totally pointless. I hope we don't ever throw the towel in on this, ever. But we find ourselves in a very, very sad situation. I feel quite strongly about this closure. Dreamland and the Scenic Railway has been a constant in my life. I mean, I came to live here in 1974, and we used to holiday here prior to that. Many memories of my childhood are of that ride. We went through the devastating arson years of the early 2000s, but then we all had some hope in 2015 that following the restoration and an £18 million investment, that Dreamland will be central alongside the Turner in the regeneration of Margate. But here we are again, looking at the demise of this iconic landmark of this much adored town. I'm totally bewildered that us as a council are unable to get the answers that we want to get to the bottom of this debacle. Democratic Services have sent emails to Dreamland inviting Dreamland to a meeting in this chamber, and these invites have been flatly declined out of hand. At the last full council, I stated that I would go down to Dreamland, and as you heard this evening, and I would try and speak to them in person. Last Friday I did that. I did visit Dreamland with a personal letter to their chief executive. As yet, I've heard nothing. I'm not sure if that's a surprise. What I will say, if someone from Dreamland is watching this evening on YouTube, and they probably are, is come and speak to us. Please do not hide and think people will forget this. There's a real risk to Dreamland's reputation without a full explanation of their actions. I really have no idea what our options are as a council. Perhaps we need a deep dive into the local plan, the planning status. Are they conforming to the grant guidelines? My process is purely out of passion. I mean, I don't have the knowledge on any of this. Do we need to get some high-level legal advice on this? I'm hoping to speak to Councillor Whitehead prior to the next local plan update meeting. Maybe we can put this on the agenda for that and see how we can protect Dreamland even further. Surely we can't accept that this is the end of the line for the Scenic Railway. I hope our fight will go on. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chair. And as has been said, I think everybody in this chamber wants to see the Scenic Railway in operation. And it's sad, really, that some members of the council are playing Dreamland's game for them by turning it into a dispute between different political parties and individuals. The reality is Dreamland have made a commercial decision not to run the Scenic Railway. That's the beginning of it, and that's the end of it. This stuff about the maintenance programme required is a red herring, and everything else is a red herring. They don't want to spend the money to run the Scenic Railway because it doesn't make money for them. That's where they are. We have to move them from that position, and we have to work together and take a collective position to do that. Not talk to each other about what happened in 2014 and whatever might have happened in what contracts and what could have been put in what when. We are where we are. I just hope that this council will stick to a united front on this and give a clear message to Dreamland. It's not good enough. We don't accept it. We might not have the powers to overturn what you're doing, but we will continue to challenge you over it until you make the Scenic Railway run again.
Anybody else before I ask the question? Okay, so can we propose the recommendations listed in the report? Councillor Scobie? Councillor Fellows, thank you. Those in favour, please raise your hand, left or right. Thank you. Those against? And those abstentions?
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
The recommendations actually say recommend council considers the content of the report. and votes on whether they consider the position to be further considered. I think what members are voting for is for it to go to Cabinet, just so that we understand that. Thank you.
Do we all understand that it's going to Cabinet? Yes. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Okay, questions from the press and public. Well, there are no questions from the press and public, so we move straight on to questions from councillors. 7 questions have been received from councillors in accordance with Council Procedure Rule number 14. The time allowed for consideration of questions from councillors shall not exceed 30 minutes. Councillors, please be as concise as you can. First question from Councillor Yates regarding Sands Heritage. Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. The leader, this is a question addressed to the leader, Councillor Rick Everett. The leader was the Cabinet member for Estates and Finance in 2015 and was involved in reviewing the 6 bids submitted to operate Dreamland and selected Sands Heritage as the operator. Later, as leader of TDC, he was involved in selling the site and the TDC car park and the Sunshine Cafe to Sands Heritage. Since this point, Sands Heritage have started closing the number of operating amusement rides, have sold off part of the site to Live Nation, and have unilaterally announced the closure of the Scenic Railway. Would the leader like to take any responsibility for this situation occurring? And would he like to tell the public why Sands Heritage was sold the park without any requirement for them to keep the Scenic Railway in operation? Thank you.
Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Yates, for your question. It gives me an opportunity to say a few things. The Council's role in Dreamland extends over more than a decade and involves 6 political administrations led by 3 different parties. The review by East Kent Audit, published in 2016, noted the challenges posed by the high turnover of officers. A later review would no doubt have made similar comments about the many changes of political control. Each decision made over 10 years was consequential on others. Trying to single out the role of any one individual is just party political point scoring, and it's particularly shallow when the questioner was himself involved, as Councillor Yates rather quaintly frames it. That's because he knows I was not the decision maker in either example, but he still wants to mislead people into thinking otherwise. The 2014 process to secure an operator for the amusement park was a complicated one. The council had wanted to appoint a not-for-profit company, but was advised that this would be illegal without allowing the private sector to bid. Sands Heritage were the only applicants for the initial offer, but the specification changed when the extent and cost of the work required became more clear. The second offer was a long lease disposal, which is why I became the appropriate Cabinet member to review the advice of the estate surveyor alongside the procurement manager and the head of economic development and asset management. As the 2016 review sets out, on the whole, the written responses received were poor, and Sands Heritage was the clear winner. Due diligence was carried out by the Director of Corporate Services in March 2015. The company was appointed and the amusement park reopened. I was definitely not involved between May 2015 and May 2019, as I was not a councillor. But lots of relevant things happened during the UKIP and the minority Conservative administrations, including the acquisition of Sands Heritage by the Arrowgrass Hedge Fund. By 2017, the council had borrowed £8 million to invest in the site. I also know, via an email from the Deputy Chief Executive in March 2020, that negotiated heads of terms for the disposal of the freehold of the whole site were signed off by Arrowgrass on October the 19th, 2018. The formal decision was then taken by the Conservative Cabinet on August the 1st, 2019. It was called in by the Labour Chair of OSP, the late great Peter Campbell, and interrogated by the panel, which included the newly elected Labour councillor, Rob Yates. The panel wanted to know why Cabinet had taken the decision to dispose of the asset now, rather than retaining it. The minutes set out a long list of questions asked and answered, but none of them relate to the operation of the Scenic Railway, or indeed any subsequent change of control. The only agreed recommendations, both of which were proposed by Councillor Yates, related to obtaining independent valuations and restrictions on future development of housing. Labour regained minority control of the council in October 2019. Due to the pandemic, the need for an agreement to transfer National Lottery Heritage Fund grant obligations to the new owners and for the sea change grant period to expire, the sale did not take place until late 2020. It did not require a further Cabinet decision, and the transaction was handled by the Deputy Chief Executive, with Cabinet's main involvement being to agree the final price. As leader, I was involved in those discussions, as was Councillor Yates as Cabinet Member for Finance. A key consideration was to secure the capital receipt in order to pay down the borrowing. I don't remember any challenge to the sale at that stage from Councillor Yates or anyone else, and doubt whether reopening the other terms of the sale would have been practical or sensible, even if there had been. Sorry. Of course, it's easy to claim with hindsight that different decisions might have been made, but pointless to do so, stripped of their context, and without being able to explain how different outcomes could have been achieved. The tone of the 2019 Cabinet report, written by the then Deputy Chief Executive, is notably upbeat about the future of Dreamland. Things had looked different in 2016, and perhaps do again in 2026, but this is being wise after the event. The only shoes Councillor Yates can put himself in are his own. He was involved. He worked very closely with the lead officer in 2019-20. What did he do? I do not think that the council could realistically have operated the amusement park itself in 2015, and it's more likely it would never have reopened, or at least not when it did. It could reasonably be assumed that the NLHF grant would put all appropriate obligations on the freeholder going forward, and they remain in place until 2037. It's not clear what would have been legally reasonable or practically acceptable to insert in the sale contract about the issues now being raised. But in any event, the heads of terms have been agreed in 2018. In summary, I was involved at these two stages, but not at many others, and of course, I take individual and collective responsibility for the actions of the Labour administrations. But so too, from 2019 onwards, was Councillor Yates. I wonder what responsibility he takes. Or like McCavity, was he never there? Where is the evidence that he took a different view then? Or that he did anything about it, if he did?
Councillor Yates, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. So I would like to first thank Councillor Everett. I think this is information that is relevant and important to all of this discussion. For example, some of this is news to me, especially around the heads of terms being pre-agreed in 2018. I still have concerns. For example, in December 2014 full council, it was said that a full report would follow upon formal...
I can't hear a question.
There's a question. So this is the preamble to the question, I promise. I believe strongly...
I'd just like a question, thank you. I'd just like a question.
I'm happy to, and let me come to this question.
Please sit down, Councillor Yates, point of order.
Okay. I would like to return to my question because I'm asked it yet.
Chair, we've mentioned previously that Councillor Bright uses the fact that he sits there to barrack us at regular intervals and makes it impossible for us to hear. We have suggested in the past that you put him on the naughty step where Councillor Keane sits so that you can keep an eye on him. We really recommend that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Austin, you may like to know from my own observation is that I hear quite a bit of talking over here, which I understand is distracting, particularly for the Vice Chair. I also hear some chatter from the back row here, not so much as here, but I also hear it here. But I also hear a bit of chatter from your section of the chamber. What I don't hear, in all honesty, is Councillor Bright. I don't hear it. I sincerely don't hear it. So if we could all just keep our voices down, and maybe before you cite others, just look at your own troops, if you don't mind. Councillor Yates, please continue with your question.
Yes, I'll go straight for it. Will the leader publish legal advice that TDC has received into the options available to TDC regarding the closure of the scenic railway? And I ask all these questions because of the Nolan principles, specifically ones around openness and accountability, and I take the Nolan principles very seriously. Thank you.
Councillor Everett.
I'll have to refer to the monitoring officer as to the privileged status of any legal advice that the council will see, but certainly we will want to be transparent about whatever legal advice we've got, and I'll liaise with the monitoring officer to see what answer we can give you in writing.
Thank you. Item 7B, a question from Councillor Green regarding high street rental auctions. Councillor Green. Sorry, I didn't read on. Councillor Green isn't here, so he'll have a question, a written response. Okay, a question from Councillor J. Bright regarding violence against women and girls. Councillor Bright, I'm afraid I'm not allowing your question due to the election period. I believe you know this already. So we move on items.
Point of order, Chair.
Yeah.
I'm not challenging that, but how was Councillor Yates's question allowed when he's also a candidate and that's part of his election manifesto? Was there a consideration given as to why his question was allowed?
One moment, I'll tell you.
I was not aware at the time. I carefully considered all the questions put forward, but wasn't aware that that was part of Councillor Yates's election campaign. So apologies if that was missed. Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on. A question from Councillor Manners regarding parking enforcement. Councillor Manners.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for Councillor Bright, Christian Bright. Could the portfolio holder advise whether current parking enforcement capacity is sufficient across Thanet? I'm concerned that we may not have enough enforcement officers to ensure consistent coverage, particularly at peak times and in known problem areas. Please provide the number of enforcement officers rostered and actually on duty on a typical weekday and a typical weekend. In addition, could you confirm how many officers were on duty at 1, 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday the 12th of February 2026 and 2, 4 p.m. on Saturday the 1st of March 2026? Finally, are there any plans to increase staffing levels or review deployment patterns to improve coverage and compliance, especially over the summer months? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bright.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks. Thank you for your question, Councillor Manners. I'm going to break that down into some sort of manageable chunks for clarity. With regard to the question on the deployment of enforcement officers, we've got 3 teams covering 7 days a week between 6:30 a.m. and 10 p.m. For the safety of officers, I'm not going to cover their deployment in any great detail. Our teams are allocated designated patrol areas which take into account the hotspots identified by members of the public and my fellow councillors. A good example of this is that obviously in the summer months we're more focused on seafront problem areas, etc. On the direct question about the number of enforcement officers on duty, I can confirm on the dates you specified. I can confirm that on the 12th of February, which was a Thursday rather than a Wednesday, at 10:30 a.m. we had 5 CEOs on duty. On 1st of March, which was a Sunday, not a Saturday, we had 2 CEOs on duty. We will continue to assess whether we've got sufficient numbers of officers as we increase restrictions, which will be particularly relevant as the new resident parking restrictions come into being. We currently have the budget for 10 enforcement officers, with 7 positions currently filled and an ongoing recruitment process for the remaining 3. I remind Councillor Manners that, as has been stated on many occasions, this role in particular of civic enforcement officer is extremely challenging. We've got officers being subjected to regular verbal and in some cases physical abuse. There are currently 2 cases live with Kent Police, which, as you can imagine, has a demonstrable effect on staff turnover. So we get up to speed and then we lose someone because they've undergone something particularly dreadful, which is as frustrating for all officers of the council as it is for residents and councillors. It's difficult to have a sort of sensible discussion about sufficiency when there are these challenges filling the positions we've actually made available. But as a point of interest, there are 58 miles of yellow-lined roads in Thanet, which would take our 7 officers 8 days to adequately cover. That doesn't include rotas, shift patterns, holidays and absence notwithstanding. So it's almost like at what point do we have sufficient? So we'll continue to measure it, but there's an awful lot of road to cover. However, the current approach of increased focus is clearly working, as can be illustrated by this year's figures, and that's to date, which show that the team have issued a total of 22,330 penalty charge notices for the year up to February. None of which incidentally have been paid with crypto. There's that number of 22,000 is an 81% increase on the final year of the previous administration and a 71% increase from the creation of a specific cabinet post. So we're doing okay.
Councillor Manners, supplementary.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. I hear what you're saying, but having 2 officers on duty for, as you say, 58 miles of coastline on a Sunday when you would expect people to be visiting the coast, I don't think is adequate. And I've asked this question before, and we're still seeing the same outcome: insufficient staffing on the ground. Sorry about the thing. If we're doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome, and so it's no surprise that nothing's changing. So my question really is about what is going to change, because repeating the same approach does not address the problem. If the council accepts that staffing levels are currently insufficient, what specifically will change in the recruitment or structuring of these roles, and by when, so that we can be confident this situation will improve? And will Councillor Bright now seriously consider a different approach, including more flexible or part-time roles, to attract experienced individuals, people with real-world judgment and public-facing experience? Thank you.
Councillor Bright.
Oh, sorry, I left mine. I think I take issue with your point on people with real-world judgment. I mean, I don't know what kind of who you think we've got working for us, but they are people with real world judgment, and to cast aspersions on members of the council, members of council staff, I don't think is really on. All of the points you've made about flexibility and what is offered, that's all there, that's all being offered anyway. Two officers on duty on a given day at one point. I mean, whether that was sufficient on that specific day or not, I wouldn't like to say, but what I would say is you're saying that we are doing the same, taking the same approach and not getting anything better. I don't know if you heard, but I just said we've made an 81% increase on FPNs issued in 3 years, a 71% increase in 2. So clearly something's working. You can't say it's not working if we're taking a different approach, and that is working. So it's difficult to hire for the role, because the role is very, very challenging. It's challenging physically and it's challenging spiritually as well. So in terms of the differences, we'll continue to do what we're doing. We'll continue to analyse it, analyse the approach, analyse the levels that we can afford, and analyse the levels that we can actually fill. We should have 10 in the next couple of months, but I say that, but someone might get punched in the face and decide that they don't want to do it anymore. That's the real world. So the point about real world expectations is I think you need to get in the real world.
A question from Councillor Oxborough regarding parking congestion, restrict path access and bus services.
Thank you, Chair. This question's for Councillor Christian Bright. Residents in Garlinge along and near to Caxton Road are facing persistent difficulties with parking congestion, restricted path access and unreliable bus service caused by inconsiderate parking blocking the bus route. Given these ongoing safety and accessibility concerns, will the portfolio holder commit to a site visit with me to Garlinge Recreational Ground to view these issues firsthand and discuss potential solutions for the community?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bright.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Oxborough, and welcome to the council. I don't think I've had a chance to say that. I'll start by saying yes. I'll be happy to visit the site with you and see what's going on myself. Completely understand your frustrations and that of your residents, particularly those whose bus services are negatively impacted by inconsiderate parking. And I think that's the thing we need to remember with reference to both your question and the question before, is that there is very little we can do if 140,000 people in Thanet decide to park inconsiderately, which is the root of the problem. The root of the problem isn't the lack thereof of parking enforcement, it's people's selfishness, basically. With regard to your point, we've therefore tasked the parking team to look into the parking restrictions in this area to improve the flow of traffic where we can. It is worth bearing in mind the introduction of parking restrictions can lead to displacement. Of parking into surrounding roads, which needs to be considered when looking at new restrictions. The Open Spaces team have told me that the council is currently exploring parking options as part of the Football Foundation Home Advantage programme project, which is currently ongoing at Garlinge Recreation Ground. Now, the hope is that this should help on days where football is played at the location. So obviously any new parking options away from the main road need to be designed and planned and receive planning permission. But the hope is that that will help.
Councillor Oxborough, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Councillor Bright. It's very true about the parking and the recreational ground. I believe there's one issue that we can't expand further than potentially the current changing rooms that have, are in disrepair. Is there any potential to expand that further? I don't know what the policy is with expanding further into the recreational ground. Would that be something you could look into?
I mean, I'd have to refer that to Councillor Alban, who is our Open Spaces portfolio holder, but I'm sure one of us will write to you.
Thank you. A question from Councillor Austin regarding small businesses. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. East Thanet MP Polly Billington recently wrote, "Small and medium-sized businesses are the bedrock of Thanet's economy. For months I have been pushing the Chancellor to do more to support coastal economies like ours." She goes on to welcome the government's decision to extend business rates relief for the retail, catering and hospitality sectors. Small Thanet businesses in other sectors have not been so lucky, however, and many across all sectors are concerned about the impact of increased national insurance contributions and the higher national minimum wage. Can Councillor Duckworth, I understand this question needs to be addressed to Councillor Duckworth, please outline what we're doing as a council to support our small businesses, how we're working with KCC, parish councils and business bodies to ensure our SMEs can stay afloat and thrive in these very challenging times. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Austin, for your question. It's right that we as a council use the funds we have to support the main business sectors in Thanet. Our tourism service plays a vital role in supporting businesses within the visitor economy, primarily through business support initiatives. A key aspect of this is regular communication regarding opportunities such as training, available support and campaigns for involvement. Thanks to UK Shared Prosperity funding, we have strengthened our collaboration with hospitality businesses and the education sector. This partnership successfully led to the launch of the Hospitality Passport, the first of its kind outside of London, a programme which will continue this year. The arts are also hugely important in Thanet, and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund has supported 46 cultural, heritage and creative activities. UK Shared Prosperity Fund has enabled the council to deliver a range of opportunities and support for businesses. This has been wide-ranging and has involved working with third parties to deliver, for instance, Ramsgate Space CIC, who are running workshops, talks and events across Thanet on various topics, such as developing a marketing plan, funding plans and business modelling. First aid training has a huge take-up among businesses as well as various networking events. This year has also featured a dedicated support programme focused on accessibility. This included webinars, training sessions, assistance with audits and online training resources for employees. Collaboration with Kent and Victor Chamber of Commerce and the Kent and Medway Growth Hub has meant better signposting and support for our businesses. The Council also provides a monthly Business Matters newsletter to businesses sharing news, events and opportunities, and this will include updates from Partnership 1. We have representatives from KCC and Ramsgate Town Council on the Ramsgate Neighbourhood Board, which ensures cross-collaboration between all levels of local government. Small businesses where the rateable value is less than £12,000 have single business premises, generally receive small business rate relief and therefore pay no business rates. Council also operates a discretionary relief scheme to offer further business rate support where those businesses are struggling financially, but where those businesses are also key drivers of Thanet's economy and aligned to what the local plan aspires to achieve. During 2026, 300,000 of discretionary relief has been awarded to support businesses. Thank you.
Councillor Austin, do you have a supplementary question?
Forgotten already. Stu, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Duckworth. That's very encouraging. 6 weeks ago or so, I wrote to the Leader and Deputy Leader asking if they'd write to the Chancellor on behalf of businesses in Ramsgate, asking for business rates relief to be extended to a wider range of enterprises. I didn't receive a response. Inability to obtain a response to emails is one reason why ordinary members bring questions to Council and not in fact to play to the public gallery as suggested earlier. In the light of Ms Billington's avowed commitment to small businesses, will Cabinet press for extension of business rate relief either through direct or via the MP for East Thanet? Thank you.
Councillor Duckworth.
There's obviously a limit to the amount of business rates relief that can be extended, but I'm certainly happy to discuss, and I often think of questions to send to ministers, so I'm happy to have a think about that and see how further we can help businesses. Perhaps I used to work on the Enterprise Allowance Scheme many years ago. I think that was a very good scheme in getting people who are unemployed, and we've got a lot of young and unemployed people in Thanet, and getting unemployed people to think about starting their own businesses and supporting it in that way.
Thank you. A question from Councillor Rogers regarding bins. Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for Councillor Alban. I raised this question at Cabinet in January. I realise that savings have to be made due to financial restraints, but why are we due to cut back on agency staff for waste collections? I was assured that staff sickness was at its height just after Christmas, and steps were being taken to address this and collections would be back to normal by the middle of January. Here we are towards the end of March with no improvement. Why are the bins still not being emptied on time, and irate residents are contacting councillors and posting complaints on social media? Thank you.
Councillor Alban.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Rogers. It wouldn't be the same without a question from you relating to bins. Agency staff are primarily deployed when the Council's cleansing services staff are on annual leave or sick leave. There is no problem to send crews out short-handed. Let me go back. There is no option to send crews out short-handed, and there are no plans to reduce staffing levels in cleansing services. A plan to reduce reliance on agency staff usage is being implemented for the coming financial year. Part of that plan includes reducing staff sickness levels. Although the rate of missed collections did increase over the Christmas period, it is worth mentioning that the number of misses was actually lower than the previous 3 Christmas periods. Since last Christmas, We have also had some vehicle reliability issues, which have also had an impact on the collection rates. That said, the rate has improved since January, and the service statistics for February indicate 85 misses per 100,000 collections. Or to put that in another way, the service successfully completed 99.92% of collections at the first attempt. I agree that any missed collections are inconvenient and frustrating for our residents, and the service must do all it can to keep the number of misses as low as possible. But it is incorrect to say that there has been no improvement since Christmas. Thank you.
Councillor Rogers, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you, Chair. Yes, the bins are collected eventually, many on a Saturday, as mine was last Saturday, also a day late the previous week, and before that. The bins are left out waiting for collection. Residents have no idea when they'll be emptied, and they're often blown around with waste spread over the roads. How do the elderly or disabled clear this rubbish on the road? Are the agency staff still being used? What happens when the funding stops? Will that situation become worse? Is this costing a weekend rate for staff? Is sickness being addressed? Now, thank you.
Councillor Alban.
Yeah, Chair, thank you for that question, plus the other 4 and 5 that you've just added into that question. Firstly, just let me say, obviously we're trying to cut back on the agency staff because of the costs. And that is what we said. You've already come to us in relation to why have we got this overspend? Well, that's why we got the overspend, and that's why we're cutting down. I can't say how the elderly or infirm would go out and clear anything off the road. It's not for them to actually do that. If there is a problem with that, you know very, very well, you can either contact me or you can contact the head of service, and we will clear that. And I think that's important. That's 2 of the questions. Could you remind me what the other 3 were?
Are the agency staff, Are the agency staff still being used?
To a degree.
What happens when the funding stops?
Well, there is no funding stopping.
Is there a cost of a weekend rate for staff?
No.
Okay. And is the staff sickness now being addressed?
It is. Just to say, the reason it is being addressed and the reason that our attendance rate is coming down for our waste services is to do that we've now have Waste Services now has its own HR person who's working very, very, very well with the staff, and so we're hoping that we will get that down by quite a lot this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're moving on now to the notice of motion. One new notice of motion has been received in accordance with Council Procedure Rule number 3. The time allowed for consideration of motion shall not exceed 60 minutes. Would councillors please be as concise as possible? Now, the notice of motion regarding council's tendering process to engage more local businesses is from Councillor Rattigan. Councillor Rattigan, as I know, this is your first motion. I will tell you, I require you to read out your motion, and to be extra helpful, I will tell you you have 3 minutes in which to speak. Over to you.
I'll try and
Point of order, Chair. Apologies, Councillor Rattigan. We've just had a decision from the monitoring officer to say that one election candidate for the upcoming election could not raise the point that was part of her election, which I think we understand.
I'd already
challenged.
Emailed
I have shared with Democratic Services before this meeting that there is clear literature that Councillor Rattigan is putting out promoting his plan for local businesses and wanting to raise. This is clearly an election stunt, and I don't think we should be allowing the council to be used by that. I would make the comparison, Chair, that we've disallowed a councillor that has campaigned clearly on violence against women and girls the entire time she's been here, including bringing a motion here, and we're somehow allowing somebody who is bringing conveniently their first motion when they're a candidate.
The actual motion was actually on the 16th of...
Councillor Rattigan, sit down, please. It's a point of order. Nothing happens when a point of order is expressed. Continue.
I would like to challenge whether this motion can happen under the same basis. I think it's Local Government Act 1986, which makes it very clear that during PERDA, candidates cannot be using the council for political purposes, and this is absolutely what Councillor Rattigan is doing, Chair.
Okay, wait 1 minute, please.
Councillor Scobie, thanks. And I have indeed carefully considered the motion and the campaign literature that you sent. And it seems to me that the detail of the motion differs from the campaign literature in that the motion refers to procurement processes and a review of procurement processes, and that isn't the basis, as I understand it, and from what I've seen of Councillor Rattigan's election campaign. I think the two are distinct, and so for that reason I allowed the motion, unless there's some other evidence that I haven't been made aware of, but from what I've seen, the two are distinct.
I'd like to lodge a protest on behalf of the Labour group. It is clearly grossly unfair that Councillor Joanne Bright has been prevented from bringing a question about a subject that she has campaigned on over a lengthy period of time, and which is a serious concern for this area on spurious election grounds, and yet other councillors, notably Councillor Rattigan, are able to use this council forum to campaign in the election. That is quite wrong, and we accept your decision because you are the monitoring officer, but the Labour group protests in the strongest terms at this decision.
I note your concerns, Councillor Everett.
Councillor Austin.
The Green Group would have no objection whatever Councillor Bright raising her question. We think it's perfectly appropriate and relevant. Thank you.
Sorry, I thought it was a point of order. Sorry. I am going to allow it. We are continuing with the motion. Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Chair. Just the first thing, this motion was actually going to start. It was actually put in on the 16th of February. It just missed the last deadline before I was actually even selected to stand for KCC. And, you know, I sympathise other people haven't been able to have their questions. But that, obviously, I had checked that out with the monitoring officer because I did want to do everything correctly. So, you know, which you can verify, I did check. Because, you know, this was put in before the election. This is, you know, my thing is about business. This is nothing to do. This is about, you know, tendering within the council. Right, it's Thanet the council's commitment to build a vibrant and prosperous community. It's essential that we look at engaging more local contractors in our tendering process. Whilst I appreciate the council the duty of best for value, but investing in our local business not only supports our economy, but also strengthens the fabric of our community by creating jobs and retaining economic benefits within our district. Local trade and suppliers have shared concerns regarding their participation in tendering. Many feel discouraged by the complex application process and the assumption that only firms with large turnovers can compete. I hereby propose that the Thanet Council conduct a comprehensive review of our current tendering process with a renewed focus on empowering local business to become approved contractors. This motion advocates for a streamlined application process that champions our local economy, fosters environmental stability and enhances community collaboration. Key benefits of local contractors. Economically, by engaging local contractors, we funnel public funds back into our community. This investment leads to job creation and supports local families, helping to alleviate unemployment and boost local spending, ultimately strengthen our economy. Sustainability. Local contractors typically have a reduced carbon footprint due to shorter transportation distances for materials and services. Sourced from our local community not only minimises logistic emissions, but also promotes eco-friendly practices that benefit our environment. Quality. Local contractors possess a profound understanding of our community, unique needs and preferences. They're established ties within the local area to improving service quality, allowing for tailored solutions that truly meet the demands of our district. Conclusion. I urge my fellow council members to support this motion to review our tendering process. The existing tendering process can be overwhelming for small businesses. I propose to establish a working group to review the options, including looking at establishing a list of local approved contractors for projects up to 15,000, accompanied by simplified application requirements. This initiative will lower barriers to entry and encourage more local businesses to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Manners, thank you. The controlling political group is entitled to reply. I call upon Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chair. Well, ordinarily, I'd like to thank Councillor Rattigan for his motion, but that's probably a little bit inconsistent with what I've just said, so I won't. We all recognise the merit of supporting local businesses, and as the officer report notes, the council is currently updating its procurement strategies to align with the Procurement Act 2023. A key change in the legislation is the shift from awarding contracts based on the most economically advantageous tender to the most advantageous tender. This new flexibility allows the council to place greater weight on non-financial benefits such as social value and local economic impact. The goals of the motion are already supported by the council's existing contract procurement rules. For projects with a value below £25,000, officers have the delegated authority to seek a single quote. This provides a streamlined route for local small and medium-sized enterprises to secure work without the complexity of a full competitive tender. The 15,000 threshold for engagement with local SMEs as proposed in the motion is therefore already achievable under current governance arrangements. The proposal to establish a formal local approved contractor list, however, would introduce new administrative requirements, including the ongoing verification of contractors' financial stability, health and safety records and insurance compliance. This would need to be funded from within existing revenue budgets and could be onerous. The opportunity cost of officer time would need to be weighed against the delivery of other high priority objectives which also benefit the district. Any policy changes that might lead to a price premium in contract awards, even if permitted under the most advantageous criteria, would need careful monitoring for budget reasons. I don't think we need a working group, as we already have governance and audit, as well as overview and scrutiny, which can set up task and finish groups to look into issues. Accordingly, I am not going to support the motion, but I'm certainly in sympathy with its objectives, and I will talk to officers to see what more we can do to meet them.
Thank you. Can I tell councillors that in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 3.7, if it's not agreed to debate the motion, it will fall, as only council can agree this motion. Can I have a proposer, please, to debate the motion? Councillor Davis, thank you. And a seconder to debate the motion? Councillor Rogers, thank you. Do councillors agree to debate the motion? Okay, show of hands. If you agree to debate the motion, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you do not agree to debate the motion, please raise your hand. Thank you. Any abstentions?
Chair, I'd just like to say I'm abstaining because I also find it unfortunate that Councillor Bright was not asked her question.
Thank you. Thank you. That is lost. Thank you. Moving on. Item 9. Oh, sorry. Okay. Proper wording, as council does not wish to debate the motion falls. Moving on, leader's report. A call upon the leader.
Thank you, Chair. Can I start by apologising to the other group leaders for the somewhat sketchy analysis of what I was going to present tonight, which I sent to them late, but earlier this week, because I didn't actually write the leaders' report until this afternoon, so it's quite difficult to work out in advance what was going to be in it. So I recognise it wasn't good enough, and I apologise for that. As it's only 4 weeks since I last gave a leaders' report to Council, I want to reflect tonight on what we've achieved together over the last 3 years. As councillors, and certainly as leader, events come at us fast and furious. It is often unpredictable, demanding, stressful, exhilarating or exhausting, and sometimes all of these. And too often we end up focusing on the next problem rather than recognising what we have achieved together. This is not to be complacent. Of course, there is and always will be more to do until March 2028, but successes do deserve recognition. Otherwise, we risk losing sight of why we're here in the first place. It's not because we're in it for ourselves. It's to get things done and make Thanet a better place for those who live and visit here. We all know that, but we don't always shout about it enough. Firstly, though, I want to put the last 3 years in the context of what went before. We had the chaotic UKIP administration of 2015 to 19, which failed to deliver any of its election promises, not least because none of them were within the council's control. This collapsed into a Conservative minority administration, which in turn fell out with the rump of UKIP in 2019 and lost control to the smaller Labour group for 20 months. That 2019 to 23 council also had to contend with the pandemic and its effects, as well as the well-documented senior management issues which sprawled across most of its life and consumed many hours of leadership and other councillor time. The council continued to deliver its core services throughout those difficult years, which reflects well on many officers still here. But we can see from the acceleration in delivery since 2023 that it was massively distracted. Time spent on internal issues, or quite rightly dealing with the fallout from the pandemic, was lost to other projects. We know that there was always a core of officers here, many of them very long serving, who care passionately about Thanet and go well beyond their paid hours to deliver for residents. They have now been joined by others who are also exceptional, led by the outstanding Chief Executive, who was, I recognise, brought in by Ash Ashby as leader in 2022. Nevertheless, the council is a partnership between officers and elected councillors. It doesn't work well if cabinet members aren't on top of their portfolios and making policy themselves. I'm obviously biased, but what I see around the cabinet table every week is experienced portfolio holders asking questions and interrogating decisions, but also working proactively and positively with heads of service and directors. That hasn't always been the case in the past, and I know it is why this administration is a successful one, which I am proud to have led for the last 3 years. This is a definitively Labour administration with our party's values at its heart, because like it or not, that is what Thanet voted for in 2023. We are delivering our election pledges, which are embedded in the corporate plan. In June, we will bring a report setting out how we are progressing against those goals, and we will put that record through the governance process at Cabinet, at overview and scrutiny, and at Council in July. We will do so with honesty. Opposition parties can have their say in that process, and I'm sure they will. We have nothing to fear from constructive criticism, and in fact we welcome it. These are not just words. One of the first things we did in 2023 was decide to send all key decisions through overview and scrutiny before they came to Cabinet, giving opposition and backbench councillors the opportunity to comment in their own forum, alongside the existing right to speak under 20.1 at formal Cabinet. What you don't see is the detailed discussions Cabinet members have behind the scenes before the reports are published. Of course, many decisions are uncontroversial, but the fact that so few comments are passed on to Cabinet by OSP illustrates that there is much more consensus than some imagine. Anyone who has seen the inadequate OSP meetings from 2021 to 2023 knows that they now add much more value to the work of the council than they did then. I should say that Councillor Fellows is also a vast improvement on the previous chair, but I recognise that he might feel that's a backhanded compliment. It's a bit frustrating though when I hear councillors say that they didn't know about disposals in their ward, when all disposals go through OSP and Cabinet. Sometimes people will find out about other things that are being considered before we're able to share details fully. But with disposals, there really is no excuse for councillors not to know. OSP has done its own good work, including the reports on violence against women and girls, chaired by Councillor Joanne Bright, and the one into working with Thanet's voluntary and community groups, chaired by Councillor Austin, which has now led to the establishment of the VCSE Forum. Aside from that, the work done under Councillor Duckworth's portfolio to maximise the benefit of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund money has been outstanding, and I encourage you to read the excellent report on it. I also want to recognise the work of the other main committees. Planning has an excellent chair in Councillor Crittenden, and Councillor Makinson is a conscientious deputy who is unlikely ever to get a chance to deputise if I know Helen. Similarly, Councillor Curry is a safe pair of hands as licensing chair. And I better acknowledge also the dedication of his deputy, or she might not speak to me later. Thanks too to Councillor Faruqi for her work on G&A, and to Councillor Britcher, both rising stars, although realistically Councillor Faruqi was already shining brightly long before she arrived here. This administration is delivering a Margate Town Council with nearly 500 responses to the latest consultation. And while it's not a project of our instigation, I'm pleased to note announcements yesterday in relation to other counties that show the government is choosing smaller and more geographically coherent unitary arrangements. This gives me optimism that we will not be lumped into an oversized authority with Ashford at the behest of West Kent Tories, Greens and Liberal Democrats when the Kent plan is announced in July. Still less the ridiculous and non-compliant single council proposed by Reform at KCC. Last week we also registered our interest in Foundation Strategic Authority for Kent, along with every other council in the county except KCC. This administration increased councillor allowances, always an easy target for the opposition, but nowhere near restoring them to their real terms value when first introduced. A Reform councillor, who is also a county councillor, spoke on this matter here last month. He suggested that our basic allowances of £5,475 should be reduced. Reform at KCC then voted last week to increase their own basic allowance of over £16,000, already the highest in England, by 3.8%. There's a word for that, and it's hypocrisy. In Councillor Keane's area, we have launched the Thanet Suicide Prevention Strategic Framework, while the beaches and coast enforcement interventions increased from 569 in 2023 to 1,305 in 2025, with 59 FPNs issued this year. With the support of senior police officers, work continues on reinstating the alcohol and ASB PSPOs, and we remain determined to give security teams and police the additional powers they need to intervene in our town centres. Earlier this week, councillors received a briefing on the major extent of works needed to make our very long list of property healthy. Excuse me.
Mind the lipstick.
So, earlier this week, councillors received a briefing on the major extent of works needed to make our very long list of property health and safety compliant and secure from deterioration from the weather. This is a major challenge financially, but understanding what is required is the essential first step to meeting it. We will take the difficult disposal decisions that are needed to help foot the £13 million bill over the next 4 years. This year, the property team is on track to deliver an extra £150,000 of new income, and we have increased the council's gross rental income from our corporate property estate by £725,000 over the last 3 years. We have put in place a programme of repairs and renewal for Thanet's 27 public toilets. We have repaired the Madeira Walk waterfall in Ramsgate, and we are repairing shelters along the coastline. With Councillor Christian Bright picking up responsibility, we've also produced the parking strategy, which the Tories agreed to do at Councillor Crittenden's request, but somehow never started. We have reinstated the lifts in the Royal Harbour car park, something Labour was already doing when the Conservatives took over in June 2021, and which they never delivered. It's a similar story with Ramsgate's Friday Market, thriving again in the right place. In Councillor Alban's portfolio, our graffiti initiative has vastly exceeded its targets and made a real difference to the public realm. We've dramatically increased the waste collected from our beaches and promenades, with more than 1,100 tonnes collected last summer and 120 tonnes of recycling compared to 30 tonnes in 2024. Waste bins are being replaced and upgraded with new recycling bins in high footfall locations. We've allocated funding for more clearing of the A299. We banned hazardous glyphosate weed killer a second time after the Tories reintroduced it, and we have switched our diesel vehicles to hydro-treated vegetable oil, reducing CO2 emissions by more than 90%, alongside a grant-funded programme of decarbonisation measures for council buildings. We launched the leafing bin scheme, which has now been shortlisted for an award, and we've planted more than 1,500 new trees this year. All 49 of the new council homes we are just completing are EPCA, meaning big savings on energy costs for residents, as well as reduced carbon emissions, and more than 700 households have been supported by our sustainable energy team this year. The new council tax support scheme adopted last month has taken 6,000 6,000 low-income households out of council tax altogether. We have a hugely exciting scheme in the works for Jackie Bakers, with support from the Football Foundation, and details expected to come to Cabinet in April. Well, we're working with Ramsgate and Margate football clubs to secure £250,000 grants to invest in pavilions and pitches at Garling's Rec, Hartsdown and Dane Park. We've just awarded the contract for the Cliftonville Skate Park. The Clock House in Ramsgate is currently being restored, and the Newington Community Centre has been extended. We've reallocated £4 million in grant funding and appointed an operator to refurbish and reopen the Winter Gardens, which the Tories closed in 2022 without a viable plan to reopen it. And we're on course to reopen the Theatre Royal. We have also proposed plans to invest in the Old Town Hall Museum, as well as Piermont Park and the Sarah Thorne Theatre in Broadstairs, and in Thanet's Villages through the Pride in Place Impact Fund. We stepped in to help save Pie Factory's home in Ramsgate, and officers have helped steer the Ramsgate Neighbourhood Board through its set-up stages and engagement with 1,500 residents and businesses to the appointment of a new independent chair in Bernie Morgan. And this week came the news that the board's adopted plan has been officially endorsed by the government. Today, we have announced that the council is leading a bid for Margate to become the country's first town of culture, despite a deadline for submission of just next week. Last night saw an initial meeting of stakeholders which was bubbling with ideas. Major work has been done to bring the port and all three harbours up to health and safety requirements and to comply with the Ports and Marine Facilities Safety Code, while Cabinet has agreed the principle of 2 new leases at the port for a seafood canning plant and marine radar testing. Last but never least, we come to housing and Councillor Whitehead. The target of 400 new council homes and 170 properties for temporary accommodation is the flagship initiative of this administration, and we are delivering on it, as set out in the report to Cabinet last week. The number of households in temporary accommodation has fallen to 207, and the number out of area was down to 37 last week. These significantly falling numbers are critical to stabilising the council's financial position. We've secured a permanent base for Rise and been able to make provision for rough sleepers throughout the winter. We are rightly proud of our housing team, but one of our reformed councillors would have you believe, on a leaflet he is distributing, that Cabinet passing the recent City of Sanctuary motion reduces social housing for local residents as homes are allocated to people arriving illegally. This is a lie, which I have no doubt is intended to aggravate those who read it. City of Sanctuary status makes no difference to our housing allocations policies, and it is against the law to allocate council homes to asylum seekers in any case. As Reform have now formed a group, I invite their leader, Councillor Manners, to explain why they are misleading residents yet again.
Councillor Davis, would you like to comment on or ask questions in relation to the Leader's report?
I would, Chair, although where to begin would be quite interesting because the Leader's report bears very little resemblance to the list of items that my group leader colleagues received. I'll have a go though. By his own admission, it was very late coming to us. Just to talk about governance. Yeah, there's been massive improvements in areas of governance in this council, but I think we need to, just before I start, by the way, I'm responding to a Leader's report that's nothing short of a party political broadcast. And, you know, let's be quite fair about this. The reason there's been debate about certain topics here tonight was in order to preserve standards in the pre-election period and not come in breach of purdah. What we've just listened to may as well have had a red rose planted on the end of it and been broadcast. So I do apologise if any of my comments respond to any of that. But let's just look at the reality, because we need balance, don't we? We need balance. So let's look at what's gone on over the last few years, and I will be raising 1 or 2 points. Let's look at governance, transparency. And the recommendations several years ago for the independent monitoring officer, since when Councillor Everett has been leader for most of the time. However, we had a vote last week at Constitution Review regarding digital voting. And yet the Labour members of that committee didn't want recorded votes for their own so-called security. We've sat here tonight and put our hands in the air on camera, recording our votes. And yet that party over there do not want their vote recorded. Why? Lack of accountability. Lack of accountability. Public realm. Let's look at the public realm. Yeah, congratulations. Less graffiti. Quite a lot of improvements. Still a long way to go, because I can take you round, and I'm sure all my colleagues round. We all have areas in our wards that maybe aren't quite the shiny bit at the front, but that still need plenty of attention. As I regularly do. However, let's not pat ourselves on the back when we're on a journey, and we're supposed to be on this journey together. You'll notice I'm not listing out the shadow cabinet and their achievements, trying to hold the cabinet to account. Well, it would do after listening to yours, Rick. So, community engagement. Yeah, there's community engagement, but it's very selective. And it's selective because they only talk to the people that agree with them. Because as soon as we raise an issue or try and groups that have come to me with points to raise, they're swept aside. They're ignored. And by the way, reference was made to the waterfall. It hasn't been running for the last week, Rick. You know, if you'd been there, you'd know that. And it's not running, is it? But you said it was. What do you mean? It's still working?
Oh, hang on a minute. This is not a conversation. You're
okay,
just...
my apologies, Chair. However, beaches, parks, open spaces. Yes, we've talked a lot about those this evening. I wonder if anybody on the other side of this chamber has recently visited the Western Undercliff, which is rapidly degenerating into shantytown. And despite my colleague and I reporting this month in, month out, nothing is done about it. There's an absolute failure of enforcement. There's a complete failure down there, and it needs addressing. So let's have the truth out, shall we? Pat ourselves on the back where we can, but the reality is still plenty more to do. Illegally parked motorhomes, cars with no MOTs, and people leaving the illegally parked motorhome to get in an illegal vehicle and drive off. No one does anything about it. Beg your pardon? We are responsible.
I'm sorry, Councillor Davis, 1 minute, please. I cannot have a conversation going on here. It's your comments and questions.
Thank you, Chair. It wasn't me that did the interrupting. I did, however. But, you know, we've got a shanty town forming on what should be adjacent to what should be the pearl in our crown. I say the pearl because it's fast fading down there. Environmental improvements. I'm sure we've made plenty. But one of them that we haven't done is about filth and grit and sand all over the Ramsgate town in particular because of the expansion of Brett's. And let me tell you, samples have been taken and are being analysed, and if they come back with what they are, I will be the first to let this chamber know. The gridlock across Thanet, how can that be in any way be environmentally advantageous? It takes 45 minutes to get here for a journey that used to take 10 because of the overdevelopment, because of the madness of enforcing building on green fields. Which administration is that? All bear some. All bear some. I will point out to the chamber at this point that out of the last 8 years, and I'm going to come back to this, but out of the last 8 years, the majority of those has been under Labour control. And if we want to work it out, it's roughly 52 months, I believe, to 30 months. And but we'll come back to that in a summary. We talk about improving the environment and having relationships or dialogue with Southern Water. Southern Water have obviously run out of capacity to poison the seas because last week we had the spectacle of it running through the middle of Margate. So how is that an improvement on our environment? Not our fault directly, but we can't claim to have made great steps forward when we're allowing that sort of thing and not taking action against them. I thought it wasn't a dialogue. Cost of living support wouldn't be as necessary if it weren't for Labour's national policies and taxing the employee into the ground.
Absolutely.
Councillor Davis, I'd like you to conclude now, please.
Okay, I want to say plenty on regeneration, but if I can, I'd like to point out, because we talked about the COVID years. Well, weren't the COVID years, didn't that include 21 and 22? And the leader resigned in April 21 rather than face a vote of no confidence. Yeah. That's the reality of the matter. And then from June 21, the Conservative administration were responsible. It was a terrible time for everybody. But to claim credit for it when you weren't actually in control is probably a bit disingenuous. In fact, if we look at it, Councillor Everett has been in charge from October 2019 until April 21 when he resigned. We then held control of the council until May 23 when he's had yet another bite of the cherry. You know, how many times do we have to follow and pursue failed policies? And which leads me, you've asked me to wrap up, but there's incredible failures down at the port and we are vulnerable because of the losses that have been incurred and then applied to our reserves. Let's remember that when this administration took over, we had about 16 million pound reserves. Those currently sit at about £6.5. £10 million.
I need you to conclude, Councillor Davis. I need you to conclude.
Out of our reserves in 2 years, we have little to congratulate ourselves on and plenty to be held to account on. Thank you.
Councillor Everett, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I will respond at this meeting, but I won't say too much. And as you've already gathered, my voice isn't in the best shape this evening, so I won't exercise it too much. I mean, Councillor Davis, you're making an assumption about the Labour Group's position on electronic voting, which is completely wrong. It's completely wrong. We have individuals in our group who go to the Constitution Review Committee and they form an opinion, which is quite rightly, and they have an open discussion. Labour Group's had an open discussion and we're going to have a free vote on it tonight because we have different views. So there isn't a Labour position for you to attack. It's astonishing that you say who's responsible for the development, considering we all know that it was the Conservatives who pushed through the local plan. You know, you weren't here or I wasn't here, but the local plan is the document that's driving the development of the area. You know, unsurprisingly, you want to talk about Brett's and you want to talk about the port because we all know that it's an obsession for you. I just remind you that the Conservative administration and the Labour administration had the same view on the port. We pursued the same aims. It's all very well you shaking your head, but we knew what we were doing and we both agreed. Clearly not. Well, you can have your opportunity when we bring back our update on the corporate plan to make all the criticisms you want to, but I suggest you restrict them to things that this council can affect, because otherwise you'll be wasting your time.
Councillor Austin, would you like to comment or ask questions on the leader's report?
I'd love to, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Leader, and thanks for advance sight of your topics. You're right that we've achieved a lot. We should all be proud of our part in what we've managed to do since 2023. As a group, we've been very concerned with governance, so we celebrate the progress we've made with improved transparency, rather more timely information for councillors about the work done in our name, and major decisions now debated at scrutiny before coming to Cabinet. It's good having the flexibility to pick up on big issues outside our standard schedule, such as Councillor Yates' call to invite Freshwater in to talk about Arlington House, and Councillor Fellowes' invitation to Dreamland. We're sorry Cabinet actually takes on board relatively few of our extraordinarily wise and well thought out scrutiny recommendations, but we're pleased at least that some of them do make it. We agree that housing and TA are another clear success. Residents are very disappointed that the government's promise of change hasn't led to a change to our developer-led planning system. So our need for more homes translates in practice into big developments of executive homes blighting greenfield sites, which landlords then snap up as short-term lets sitting empty much of the year. But buying and building new homes to house local families and bringing households in TA back into Thanet all have our full support as we know they transform lives. We're also very pleased at the new 100% council tax rebate for our poorest residents, and we regularly share the work of our home energy team and other services. Sadly, our budget amend to trigger a more comprehensive basket of support was rejected, so we're looking forward to the poverty strategy that we're told will pull these services into a coherent safety net for residents who are struggling. Residents do comment positively on the practical improvements they see in our public realm and open spaces, where things like graffiti removal have a disproportionate impact on how we feel about where we live. We owe thanks to our officers for their hard work, but also to the many hundreds of volunteers who set up community gardens, pick litter, or care for their local parks. During the recent Ramsgate Spring Clean, in which we weren't allowed to be pictured with officers right across the other side of the aisle, volunteers removed 343 bags of rubbish from Ramsgate streets and beaches. But we also saw some notorious grot spots that were much easier to clean this year due to the daily efforts of our wonderful regular Ramsgate litter pickers volunteers. We're delighted to be working closely with cleansing in Ramsgate through the Ramsgate Litter Forum that we set up with TDC as far back as 2018. We're pleased to see public toilets refurbished for both residents and visitors, but we hope to see those improvements extend across the Isle. In Ramsgate, for example, the lookout toilets at Screaming Alley have been closed for some months now, and Ramsgate Town Council is still having to pay for portaloos at the Western Undercliff Beach each year during the school summer holidays. We're now seeing encouraging progress in regeneration schemes, with everything from huge projects like the Winter Gardens to tiny ones like the Pride in Place microgrant works coming on stream. We're hugely relieved at the pie factory result, though frustrated that money we could have spent elsewhere has ended up being paid by one part of a future East Kent authority to help address the massive debts of another. We do hope that TDC and KCC can resolve the unresolved, long-awaited Ramsgate Highway scheme and make some progress with it, because it really is key to unlocking prosperity in our town. Despite the helpful information shared at the briefings on the rules behind asset disposals, we remain unconvinced that Broadstairs Town Council's interest in the Piermont Depot, or indeed Ramsgate Town Council's previous interest in the Eastcliff Lift, needed to be handled in such an adversarial way, particularly when many of our interests coincide and some of the same members are involved. Under LGR, as Councillor Scobie pointed out earlier, our town and parish councils will be increasingly important as a local link for residents, and building good working relationships will be vital. There are many examples of other councils managing this, we feel, rather more effectively. And finally, following the leader's example, my personal thanks to my marvellous group members for their sterling efforts, both within this council and outside it, to improve lives in this community and bring hope. To Councillors Yates and Garner, for example, for their work with Southern Water, Councillors Wing and Smith on the Sea-Link project, Councillor Munns on parking and highways, and Councillor Presland on open spaces. I am very proud to work with this group. Thank you.
Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. I think we agree on a number of things. I'd just say to you, you say that Cabinet hasn't taken on board recommendations from scrutiny. It'd be quite interesting to audit that, because there haven't been that many recommendations that have come through from scrutiny. And maybe we'll ask Democratic Services to carry out an analysis and see how many there have been and which ones have been taken forward. Because I'm not aware of the situation you're describing. I think we've listened to what scrutiny has had to say when you've sent us recommendations. I don't accept the description of the dealings with Broadstairs Town Council over Piermont Depot as adversarial. I think what they have to be is, what we have to focus on is transparency and propriety. You know, we can't get ourselves into a position where we reach an agreement with one party which is unfair to another party. And, you know, that's why we have systems and that's why we operate in the way we do. But certainly it's not an adversarial approach. We simply don't agree that we can do the things that we're being asked to do. And that's the advice we've got, and that's where we are. I would like just to say, take the opportunity to thank Ramsgate Town Council. You mentioned the litter pick, but for their staff, for the work that's been done this week on a piece of land next to Santa Court off Manston Road. Fantastic work by Maxine and the team. We really appreciate that, and, you know, congratulations to them for the work they've done, and thanks very much.
Councillor Manners, would you like to comment on or ask questions of the leader's report?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, why not? I'd like to thank Councillor Everett for his address and prior sight of an approximation of the bones of a summary of his statement, which upon reading yesterday, I was left wondering, was this a valedictory? And should I be preparing a eulogy? Until I remembered there was an election in a few weeks. But I want to give credit where it's due. Standards in our beaches, parks and open spaces have improved, certainly over the last 3 or 4 years. And I'm sure the leader will rightly thank the many volunteers and community groups across Thanet who give their time freely and who make a real difference. Because let's be clear, this progress is not due to the council alone. And that is the point. Much of it relies on goodwill, and the council must support it wholeheartedly, not quietly rely upon it. There's also been progress on public toilet provision, which is welcome. I recognise Southern Water's refurbishment of the facilities at Botany Bay, which quite frankly were an embarrassment to the Isle, and have been refurbished and to a very, very high standards. It shows what partnership, constructive engagement can achieve. They might not be our best friends, but they are neighbours, and it helps to get along with them. But we should go further on public toilets. Where the council leases properties that it owns at key visitor sites, we should make better use of what already exists. I've raised this before. On new leases or renewal, we should be ensuring that on-site toilet facilities are available for public use, delivered by the lessees themselves. Delivery on public investment remains uneven, however. While some areas have seen investment, others, like the pavilion in Piermont Park, despite its new lessee, remain tired and neglected. The contrast with Jackie Baker's is very stark. Residents see that contrast and they expect better. On environmental improvements, I would very much like to recognise the work of our excellent tree officer and the team. The dedication, engagement with residents and ability to build community involvement has been exemplary, and it should be a model for how this council works with the community. We should continue tree planting, expand initiatives like bee posts and strengthen protections for pollinators. And I certainly welcomed the council's banning of glyphosate. But with finances under pressure, this self-evidently must be done in partnership with our communities. On governance, yes, there has been improvement, reflected in external audit commentary, and in great measure thanks to our Chief Executive. But governance is not simply about process, and that brings me to the Council's financial position. Because while achievements are listed by the leader, the cost, rather less so. Reserves have been drawn down to critical levels. This is not sustainable. Delivery matters, but so does sustainability. The question is not what's been done, but what position we've left the council in. On regeneration, residents were promised delivery. What they've seen, all they have seen so far, is delay. Nowhere is this clearer than at the Port of Ramsgate, with which I shared Councillor Davis's views. Years of misguided, monomanic focus on a ferry ambition have come at a significant cost. Future options are now limited. In fact, we've painted ourselves into a corner. And yes, I welcome the new leases that are being granted there, but that's a short-term solution. It's not part of a strategic plan for a port. On housing, we've bought properties from developers. This has come at a huge cost, but this is a short-term reallocation of housing. It does not solve the underlying problem, which is an overall lack of housing for a growing population. We're simply redistributing the houses. We're reallocating them based on, well, not based on people's ability to pay, on other criteria. We're not actually doing anything to solve the homeless problems. On allowances, the rises were made at a time when council reserves were at a far more sustainable level. That has now changed after 3 years of Labour administration. So that was the reason why the Reform Group proposed that we did not proceed with the rise to councillors' allowances. We simply don't have the money to pay for it. You can only spend it once, Councillor Everett. Antisocial behaviour is an ongoing issue, and I look forward to seeing the new PSPO being exploited by enforcement and police to make Thanet a safer place for residents and visitors. In Margate, too much of the seafront still feels tired and neglected. The area beneath Arlington House is a visible example of this decline. We cannot simply stand by. We must act where sites deteriorate. I hope a town council for Margate will lead to improvements with this regard. Thanet should be a leading coastal destination, but too often we're underperforming. We fully support Thanet's application as a town of culture, and the council has a duty to ensure the £3 million funding is used to provide long-term improvements, not short-term gains. So yes, there has been progress, but progress built on depleted reserves, delayed delivery, short-term fixes. That is not secure. What residents need now is delivery, realism, and crucially, a council that lives within its means. Thank you.
Councillor Everett.
Well, thank you, Councillor Manners. I've got to say I'm disappointed that you didn't explain how the City of Sanctuary motion reduces social housing for local residents as homes are allocated to people arriving illegally, because I don't understand how that works, and obviously you don't either. So perhaps you should have a conversation with your candidate. I will say, well, I didn't understand the points you were making about housing, and I'm not sure anyone else did, to be honest with you. But what I will say is 66% of the overspend in recent years has been on temporary accommodation. So obviously we're doing something about it, which the Conservative administration didn't, as we could go into at length again. And you were part of the Conservative group, I think, previously. It wasn't always clear whether you were or not, but I think you were. I do agree with you about volunteers. We always recognise the role of volunteers, but let's not pretend that the great majority of waste services and cleansing work is done by volunteers. Our staff are out there every day doing it. So we absolutely welcome the partnership with volunteer groups, with community groups. It's an essential part of keeping Thanet clean. We know we've got more to do. We all recognise that. You'll have the opportunity to challenge that when we bring back the corporate plan and talk to us more about that. Love to spend the £3 million, but let's win the competition first.
Thank you. Moving on, annual report of the Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Panel. That's you, Councillor Fellows. Over to you.
No Kenny Rogers tonight. As per usual, my full report is attached to this evening's agenda pack. There's been some praise from around the chamber tonight upon me, but I'd like to give the thanks to the members of the scrutiny panel for their work throughout the last year. There's been some lively discussions with a wider range of type subjects, with 54 key decisions coming through the panel and then on to Cabinet. We intend to keep watch over the progress of the refurbishment at Arlington House, and I've been informed this week that the work will be starting in May. I think the meeting with Freshwater has to be one of the highlights of the year for the panel. Plus, if we hear of any developments from Dreamland, then we'll let everybody know. LGR will become a focus over the next several months with our newly set up working group that will follow that and report regularly back with an update. A couple of successes to mention from this last year come from previous scrutiny reviews, and that's the restarting of the parish forums that continue to go from strength to strength, and also the start of the volunteer community and social enterprise forums. We have to give thanks to our officers and cabinet members who came along and gave presentations and took part in the question and answer sessions, and I'm sure members feel more informed because of the work the panel is doing, and we look forward to continuing this work over the next year. And as a response to your question about recommendations, it's in my report, there's been 4 recommendations, and I believe 3 of them were taken forward, 1 wasn't. They are in the report. Thank you. Open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do councillors have any comments? No. Can we, what do we do here? I'll just say thank you, actually. Thank you, Councillor Fellows. Thank you. Annual report of the Chair of the Standards Committee. Mr. Tucker, where are you? There you are. Please take your seat.
Thank you, Chair.
When you're ready.
I think members have all seen the report that's attached to the papers for today. There's not a lot more to say except that it's on the quiet side at the moment. and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, Mr. Tucker, don't speak too soon, please. Please. Do councillors have any comments at all? Are we all happy? Okay, I then again say thank you, Mr. Tucker. Annual report of the Chair of the Governance and Audit Committee. Would councillors please refer to the supplementary agenda? I now call upon Councillor Faruqi to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a long meeting, so I won't make it longer, but I'd just like to thank the exemplary work and expertise of our council officers. with this committee. I'd like to thank the committee members who have turned up and who have helped us in this work. I feel that this year we have made modest but measurable improvements, which is, I think, all we could hope for. And so I think pragmatically we're doing a good job, but we will continue to scrutinise ourselves as a committee to ensure that we're adding value. The recommendation is for noting the report, which is attached, and obviously welcome any questions, but I'd be grateful if you did, because I left the hospital and came straight here, so I'm super tired. Thank you.
Oh, we're all a bit tired, councillor, let me tell you. Do councillors have any comments? No, I'm going to say thank you. Again, applying changes made to the TDC members of Code of Conduct to the parish version. I move that the recommendation as set out in the report be adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Thank you very much. Amendments to the Constitution regarding... Sorry, it's when I change pages. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Amendments to the Constitution regarding the deadline for submitting questions to full council. I move that the recommendation as set out in the report be adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Okay, has anybody anything to say? Can I ask if we just agree? Do we agree? Thank you. Amendments to the Constitution allowing electronic voting. I move that the recommendation as set out in the report be adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Do any councillor... Oh, hang on a second. Get my pad. Councillor Scobie.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to bring 5 amendments, which would be very quick, don't worry. I just want to start by stating my position, which is I think we should have electronic recorded voting for every single vote, and names should be published in the minutes. I had 4 years of that at Kent County Council. It worked absolutely fine. I understand what people are saying around safety, but as Councillor Davis said earlier, we're all raising our hands anyway, and some of the most important votes are recorded anyway. And I think this system will allow transparency and accountability. So I'm amending. I'm going to go through them one by one, just so I can explain to people, because this can be sometimes a bit confusing. So I'm looking at Annex 1, which is Part 4, Rules of Procedure, amended Section 7. So the first part I'm amending is 17.2E, which currently reads the names of... This is the second sentence of that, which currently reads the names of councillors and how they vote will not be included in the minutes unless a recorded vote has been agreed to. I'm proposing in my amendment, Chair, to change that to the names of councillors and how they vote will be included in the minutes, full stop. So that's the first amendment, Chair. The second amendment, going from that, is that section 17.4, because it is talking about a situation where the electronic voting system is not working, because I'm going to propose in a moment that we remove the whole section around recorded voting. That needs a new clause, and I'm proposing that we add in the following wording, and just so everyone knows, I've sent this to the officers so they don't have to frantically write this, but I suggest adding a 17.4D, which just refers to, in these circumstances, the names for and against the motion will only be recorded in the minutes if council votes for a recorded vote. So that just covers off that. The third amendment is to delete 17.5 because it isn't needed. Fourth amendment is to change 17.6 to 17.5. And the fifth amendment is to change 17.7 to 17.6. I'm fairly comfortable that that is watertight. I know it's not right for us to be making constitutional amendments on the fly, but I've sent this to officers. I'm getting the nod from Nick that covers off everything in that provision. So the choice, I think, is clear. There are people obviously in this room that want to keep the original proposal. My amendment proposes opening it up and making it completely transparent. So if you want there to be transparency in the electronic voting, I would suggest vote for it. If you don't, then we'll go back to the original motion. So hopefully that's clear and can save some time, Chair.
Thank you. Do you have a second effort? Take your pick. Okay, we can now open this to the floor to debate on the amendment. We clear? We're going to I'm going to talk about the amendment now. Does anyone want to talk about the amendment? I'm going to go to Councillor Crittenden because she had her hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to check that by commenting on this amendment, I do not prejudice my opportunity to bring my own amendment on a completely different point elsewhere in this after I've spoken. Because I know there's only once, but this I want to speak on this amendment and then I want to speak on the revised. Okay. I do have, Councillor Davis raised this earlier, I do have concerns about the complete publication of everything. And I did explain this. We had a security briefing as members briefing as councillors very, very recently. We were advised basically by the police that due to the intimidation, threats and risks that we face as public figures, we shouldn't put our photographs online, we shouldn't use social media, we should vary our movements so no one knows where we're going. We should keep our address and our phone number secret. Now, any councillor in this room will know that that is utterly impossible and impractical. And I just want to add that most recently a councillor in this room had in this chamber faced having their alleged address published on Facebook with the message, "You know where they live," because of something that had happened in this chamber. That's an implied threat. That's the kind of thing we face, all of us. And that is why there is a mixed view. I come from a social work background. I know very, very well about transparency. But also I know that transparency does change voting behaviour, just as in my profession, it changed the way people actually dealt with child protection. And that was to do with the access to files and the Children's Act 1989 and 1990 in reverse. So I do have concerns that were shared on the Constitutional Review Committee. And I don't support that. I think we're rushing into that. So thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to record that, amazingly enough, Councillor Scobie and I are in just about full agreement. My apologies for the feedback. The only thing that I would suggest is in the beginning of his amendment, which was about recording the names of councillors that would be included in the minutes. I would suggest that also says unless it's a non-recorded vote, unless the chair has agreed to a non-recorded vote. It simply clarifies that the names will be published unless the chair gives it, unless there's good reason for them not to be for security. That way we've covered the concerns of those that are nervous about this. I have to say that I was at the briefing and I didn't find it particularly disturbing, but I would imagine that some people could have done. It's that briefing is mainly aimed at higher level politicians than those in a district council. But as I say, we already identify our votes, so this isn't changing anything to make anything more vulnerable.
So you're sticking with, you're not changing anything?
No, I don't think that anything Councillor Davis said is required in that. I'm quite comfortable with the amendment, so I'm not willing to accept that.
Thank you. Councillor Pugh.
You take us a break. I don't blame you. But still, to be honest. I just wanted to quickly say I wasn't able to attend, unfortunately. I had to send apologies to Constitutional Review because I would have wanted to speak on this quite a lot. So I'll use this opportunity now and a bit later to speak on it. I completely agree with all of the amendments that you put forward, Councillor Scobie. Although I was a little bit relieved that once you got to 4 and 5, they were just about shifting them up rather than actual. So that was a relief, to be fair, because you were starting to lose the room, I think, at that point. I think it's really important that everything is recorded, all of our votes. I take the point that Councillor Crittenden said and many other concerns about safety, and I do think it is a very valid one. I myself, my home address isn't no longer listed in the Register of Interest or on the council website because of threats I received to me and my family after the ceasefire, the Gaza ceasefire motion a couple of years ago. So, I'm very aware of the risk that there is. But what I would say is that MPs and county councillors, you go onto the Parliament website and you can see how every MP has voted on every single issue. And I think that's really important. I think if there's concerns about our safety and security, I think that's something that we should try and tackle and address and work with partners to make better. I don't think that should stop us from doing our roles and what we've been elected to do in representing people, because also as well, I think it's really important that we're able to stand on the decisions that we make and justify. And actually, one of my frustrations has been when we don't have recorded votes, and when recorded votes have been voted down, is that, and I'm not going to name names, but there will then be certain councillors who will then pretend to residents that they have voted in a certain way they haven't, when actually I think it's really important, if you're going to vote something down, you're going to vote for something, I think you then need to, if you're so confident about doing that, you should then be open and transparent with residents about how you've done that. So I think that's really important. So I'd like to suggest, I appreciate I've waffled on for a little bit, not as long as Councillor Davis did earlier, but I'd like to suggest that we move to a vote on this so that we can then get to this amendment, so that we can then get to other amendments and everything, because I appreciate I was late and I do apologise, but Charles looks like he's getting tired and it is almost 10 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay, that's
can I do a point of order sort of thing? There are 5 amendments proposed by Councillor Scobie. Could I suggest that we split out those 5 amendments?
No,
so you want them as a block?
No, we've just had a procedural.
Oh, sorry,
motion
my
here.
apologies.
So everything stops for this and move to the vote. That's what you've said. Do you have a?
On a point of order, Chair, I think for it to be a procedural motion, it has to be moved and seconded. It hasn't been seconded. Well, and then we'll vote against it. So that way.
And then, sorry, Charles, sorry. I was only suggesting we move to a vote on the amendment, and then if there's any other amendments or talking about the rest of it, then people can talk. I'm not trying to cut anyone off. I'm just conscious that we'll spend a lot of time talking about the amendment when actually it feels like within the room in general, you know, I can't see any problem with any of the amendments, but apologies. Maybe I'm jumping the gun and I would actually like to get home at decent hour tonight.
Okay, so let me help here. This is the situation. So we've got a proposer and a seconder to vote on the amendment. If we deal with that, then we go back to the original motion, and then we've got councillors. Whitehead, Duckworth, Cup and Wright already, and Bright put their hands up to speak. Okay, are we clear? Okay, now apparently it's my decision on what we do now. So if I think that the amendment has had enough discussion, then I take up Councillor Pugh's suggestion, and when we vote. I don't think we've had enough discussion about the amendment, so I'm going to go on a couple more speakers on the amendment. Okay, so we're going to, Councillor Whitehead, you want to speak on the amendment, to be clear? Okay, off you go.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's definitely a reference to the amendment in that I do think that the amendment brings a great deal more in terms of transparency. And although I disagree very much with Councillor Davis's comment earlier that this is about avoiding transparency, I can make the choice as an individual to be as transparent as possible, because I will not be intimidated or bullied or made to change my mind. But the reality is, especially for female councillors, there is a significant level of risk in terms of not only social media behaviour, but also external behaviour. And as we've heard from Councillor Pugh, this applies to all councillors also. I have previously had what someone thought to be my address published, with instructions then being sent to people to come to my house and dump rubbish or speak to me. I have also recently had on the East Kent Reform page someone asking for the names of the councillors who put forward the City of Sanctuary motion, followed by the actual admin of the page naming me when they had been specifically asking for my name so that they could find my address. I won't stop doing what I'm doing because people do this. But I want equally to acknowledge that we have had some awful behaviour in Swale recently. We have had councillors bullied and damaged bluntly. I have had to have discussions with my son about not answering the door. He's very friendly. He likes answering the door. I don't feel safe with him doing that anymore. All of these are concerns that many councillors have, and that's why they put forward this. It's not a lack of or wanting to not be held responsible. It's the fact that when we make decisions externally, there are often very unpleasant people who threaten to do very unpleasant things to us. So I fully recognise anyone who doesn't want to support the amendment in that way, because it is a very frightening place for people to be sometimes. So in conclusion, I fully support having recorded votes and having transparency, and I'm very happy to support the amendments. But I would like everyone to acknowledge that the level of fear that is often created in simply making a decision is something that's very personal to individuals. And we are now, unfortunately, in a political environment that allows people to be targeted and harmed. And that's something that we have to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, it is a very serious issue, and I echo to some extent what Councillor Whitehead has said. I think I do support the amendment, mainly because people can hear what we say in the chamber anyway, so they may have an inkling about the way we're going to vote about things. The other thing that could happen is if we don't record it, things will just get made up. So we might as well be transparent to try and get away from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cupp.
Thank you, Chair, and I fully support Councillor Scobie's amendments to this. A quick little story, I promise, Chair. When I was first elected, there was an article that was released about me, and I received handwritten death threats. I went out to my car and had knives in the back of my wheels, and it was horrible, especially as a newly elected, back then young councillor. And it was, thank you, and it was petrifying. But equally, I do think that we should be able to stand by our convictions within this chamber, and there are multiple different councils that have named voting, whether it's in Parliament, whether it's even Canterbury City Council, they all have named voting. And I think it's important that we are able to, on the element of transparency, but also to be able to say to people, this is how I voted. And I fully respect what Councillor Whitehead has said, and I think it's also important that we are able to show people what our principles are and what we stand for, because if we stop doing that, then we let those who threaten us win, and actually that's not right. So if we can be able to demonstrate and say, this is how I voted, here it is recorded, then we can shut those people up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I also agree with the amendment. As a former county councillor, we had to have we didn't have a choice, but it was never a problem. And I also think it's important that we are upfront with the public. Then if you're upfront, I find you don't get very much hassle. I personally have had some hassle, but I deal with it and move on. I come from a generation where sticks and stones might break your bones, but names will never hurt you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Bright.
This one. So listen, I was on the Constitutional Review Committee the other week, and actually I found it really interesting, both at our group meeting this week, listening to people's opinions, which, as Councillor Everett has already said, are varied, and listening this evening to members. I am really cross that the views, considering I was sitting next to Councillor Davis at the Constitutional Review, and I was very, very clear about where my reasons came from, and you've completely misrepresented my point. You're talking about a lack of transparency in terms of political advantage. That's not what it was about at all. No, there is no point of order because there is
Councillor
no point
Bright,
of order, and I'm going to
one minute, please. Is it a point of order?
Yes, it is, Chair, because my contribution at the Constitutional Review Working Party is a matter of record. It was recorded. This is not about Councillor Bright attacking me for what I said.
No,
if he has a point
it's
to
not,
make about this
Councillor
debate.
Davis. I'm sorry, it's not a point of order.
Well, it shouldn't be an attack on me.
Please be
And he's
seated.
misrepresented
Please be
my-
seated. Thank you. Continue, Councillor Bright.
Thank you. 3 years in, you still don't know what a point of order's for. I'm attacking you. I'm attacking you for what you said earlier on in this meeting. So, the point I'm making is, and I was going to say, you know, it's rarely rabid progressives that deal out threats, but I listened to Councillor Pugh's point earlier, and I did exactly the same after the exact same meeting. So I completely sympathise, and that's where I was coming from, right? It's not from, you know, many of us standing up, and this is my point of discomfort really, is many of us standing up and saying, do you know what, it doesn't bother me. We're blokes who think they can look after themselves. You know, physically, I can always bite someone on the knees and stand up for myself. But I think the point I'm making is I don't appreciate being misrepresented at a previous meeting when my point was very, very clear. It was very, very about protection of my fellow councillors of all parties, not about any attempt to hide behind the political views that I have. And do you know what? I'm not shy with my political views. You might have noticed, Councillor Davis.
Councillor Fellows.
I agree with Councillor Scobie's recommendations. I think we were going to put similar things across. I mean, I was at the Constitutional Review where the recorded voting was discussed. I understand the views that are put across. I understand the views that are being put across tonight. But recorded voting is essential for transparent for an accountable council. When representatives make decisions that affect the public, those decisions should be visible to the people they serve. A recorded vote ensures that every member stands openly behind their choices and allows residents to understand how and why decisions are made. Secret voting may sometimes feel more comfortable, but it removes the accountability. Our role is not to vote in private like a jury. Our role is to represent the public. Transparency builds trust, and trust is the foundation of good governance. If we believe in decisions we make, we should not hesitate to have them recorded. Open voting shows integrity, strengthens democratic responsibility, and reassures the community that their council acts in an open way. I understand why people feel that secret voting is safer. It can feel easier to make a decision when no one knows how you voted. But as councillors, we're not here to make decisions in private. We're here to represent the public. Recorded voting protects democracy because it ensures accountability. The people we serve have a right to know how their representatives vote on important issues. Transparency builds trust, while secrecy can easily create suspicion, even when decisions are made with good intentions. If we stand by our decisions, we should be willing to stand by them publicly. Recorded votes show that we are open, responsible, and prepared to be accountable to the community that elected and appointed us. That openness ultimately makes our council stronger.
Thank you. just to remind you, we're still on the amendment, right? Councillor Wing.
I find it really difficult being in this chamber because I get huge anxiety when there's any form of confrontation. So I don't find the confrontation that goes on here very easy at all. I find it really difficult. And I was at that members' briefing, the police briefing, and it's pretty horrifying. And I feel really sad that people in both parties have been subjected to physical threats, intimidation, bullying. I haven't been subject to physical threats in this room, but I've been subject to intimidation. That's not funny, John, is it? It's simply not funny, because we need to sort our behaviour out in this room. We do need to sort our behaviour out in this room, because we are modelling bad behaviour to people out in the public. And some of those people out in the public then feel they've got exactly the right way to abuse people in this room for the way they might vote. I fully support the amendment, because I also think we need to stand up and be counted. We are representing our residents. But I also think I'm in a party where I can vote whatever way I want. So I also understand that when a whip system exists, that there are people in this room who've had to vote a way they might not want to vote or feel they should vote for their people who in their ward. We're Central Harbour, we've got Villages, we've got Margate, we've got Broadstairs. They're completely different towns. You know, what suits Ramsgate may not suit the Villages. So but while we have a whipping system, are we making it uncomfortable for councillors to not vote in a free thinking way? But I seriously think we need to address some of the issues we have in this room, which is, you know, we could have had this meeting could have been an hour shorter, exactly the same as the last one, if we hadn't have had the antagonism in this room.
Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, for me, in the end, this is about transparency, and that's why I support the amendment, and that's why Councillor Davis was completely wrong when he jumped to the conclusion that we on this side were going to vote to conceal people's votes. I just think it's really sad that we're in a position where members of this council are worried about disclosing publicly how they voted in a council meeting because of the threats they might receive and have received online. That is shameful. It's shameful, and it's not restricted to Thanet. It goes on all over the country, and it's a really damaging part of our democratic process today. And I agree with Councillor Wing to the extent that the way we treat each other is important, because we don't want to reinforce those behaviours outside. But actually, the way that we behave in the online space and some of the things that people say, which they know are not true, and they say for political advantage, they cause those problems as well. So I'm going to vote for transparency, but I have absolute sympathy and understanding to those members of my group who are concerned about having their name against votes. And I'm afraid whipping Councillor Wing, anybody in the Labour group will tell you, is a complete non-story. I'm not aware of anybody in the Labour group who's wanted to vote against a whip in the 7 years that I've been the leader of the Labour group. So, I mean, you may be, but I'm not. It's really not a problem.
Thank you. Now, just to remind you, we are now voting on the amendment. Sorry, Councillor Mellors, I'm going to say no. We're now voting on the amendment. 5 of them. Can we take them all together? Is that all right?
Yeah, Chair, the only reason I introduced them that way was so everyone could follow it, but they are one package of amendments.
Understood. Thank you. So just to be clear then, Council, we are now voting on the amendment. Those who are in favour of the amendments, please raise your hand. No. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? 1. Thank you. That's carried. Now we're going back to the motion. It's 12 minutes past 10. We're going back to the motion. Still open. The floor's still open. Has anybody got anything else to say? Councillor Crittenden.
Thank you. As I said just now, I do have some amendments. I think that they are going to be way less contentious, and some questions. Unfortunately, I was unable to be at the Constitutional Review Committee, and so I didn't have the opportunity to take part in that. A couple of quick questions. Does the new system include abstain as well as voting for or against? I have no idea. Assuming it does, will non-votes be recorded separately? Because they should, because abstain can carry a particular meaning that not voting does not. And what are the protocols for electronic voting in any session closed to the press and public? Will electronic voting be used for approval of minutes? The vote itself takes about 5 seconds. Propose a seconder, do members agree, agreed, move on. Obviously not the 30 seconds allowed if it's electronic. And so I would actually like to propose that it is not included in electronic voting for reasons that will become apparent when I get to the end. I'm referring next to paragraph 3.3.3 on pages 88, 89, which translates to Annex 1, para 17.2c on page 93. 17.2c3 states that the chair may close the vote before the 30-second window after all members have voted at their discretion. That if they do that, then it cancels out and denies members the right given in 17.2c2, immediately above, to change their vote within the 30-second window. Like it or not, we all have the right to be ditherers and change our mind, or at least we do unless the chair takes it away from us. At this point, there are several variables that I'm not going to go through, but just to say that I think that 17.2c3 should be removed. And instead, I would like to propose to reduce the voting window down to 20 seconds and add in a chair's discretion to extend the voting window by 10 seconds if not all members have voted at that point, as well as excluding voting for approval of the minutes from the electronic vote, simply because that is normally, obviously if we want to have it as a recorded electronic vote, then we can ask for it, and that would be an option. That would be my preferred option, which members may want to consider tonight. And obviously, if officers advise that my proposal is not viable or need more time to consider, then maybe we could back this back to CRC to look at it if necessary. In which case they would be able to iron out, hopefully, the quirks caused by the conflict between paras 2 and 3 under section 17.2c. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Crittenden. My next question has to be, is there a seconder for this amendment?
Second the amendment, Chair.
Thank you. I understand we've got hands up, but there's a procedure. We have to go in the right order here. The office.
Could I just ask something?
Well, I really don't want you to ask, Councillor Wynne.
I now lost the plot. I think some really valid changes have been made by a member of that committee who couldn't attend because there was a town council meeting. So if we were to vote the amendment down, and then I proposed another motion which would send it back to constitutional review to take on board those amendments which need a lot more thought.
Okay, Councillor Wynne, stop there a moment. I respectfully ask you to just stop there a moment, because the advice from councillors, unless someone's going to object, is to refer this to CRC to go forward. You would appreciate it's quite a weighty thing that you've presented us with. We've had no notice of it. We can't consider it. Okay, I thought you meant. Okay, come on then.
So I would just say, like, I completely agree with what Councillor Crittenden's saying. I went through what the logic. I don't think it's quite radical what she's saying. She's suggesting that we don't include the minutes in electronic voting because, as part of our meetings anyway, they're approved. So what is the point in adding an extra piece of procedure? She's suggesting that you remove the ability of the chair to curtail the 30 seconds because she raised the point quite rightly that somebody might have voted the wrong way, so they might want an extra 10 seconds to change that. And she suggested that instead of 30 seconds, the chair has, it is 20 seconds, with the chair being given the opportunity to add an extra 10 seconds if needed. I don't see why that's complicated or why we would need to send this back to constitutional review in 6 weeks' time to come back to full council. The electronic voting comes in next month. We get the new system. Why can't we just agree that those amendments? I think it's quite clear, and I don't think it changes fundamentally. And if Councillor Crittenden will, if officers have concern, maybe add an addendum to say, and we delegate democratic services to make sure that the will of council is tied in properly into the constitution. I don't see why this would need to go back to a constitutional process.
All right, I've got Councillor Everett and Councillor Davis. With your hands up, I'm aware. If you could just. Councillor Everett, what do you have?
Well, I'm concerned that we need to adopt a procedure for electronic voting if we're going to install an electronic voting system. And I don't think it's sensible to wait until the July council meeting in order to make changes to the constitution. What Councillor Crittenden is saying seems to be very sensible. I mean, I am facetiously minded to suggest that we ought to add to the constitution that the Constitution Review Committee isn't allowed to meet without Councillor Crittenden, because she's always going to do this if she's not involved in the first place.
I did ask for the three-step process not to be removed.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I think I might be able to set one that's part of Councillor Crittenden's concerns aside anyway, because I was at that committee, and as I believe you were, and we had a discussion about the time period for voting. The reason the extra it was originally mooted to be 20 seconds. The reason that the extra 10 seconds was added, and I believe it may have been yourself that proposed that, was to give consideration time, but it was only a 6-month period. So that this 30-second business is for a 6-month trial period, at which point, if it needs tweaking, then it can be. So I don't think we need to make any differences at this point to that. Because it also allows where stations are going to need to be shared for voting, it gives that additional amount of time. So I think we have actually covered the concerns that are being addressed here. And it's a shame Councillor Crittenden wasn't at the meeting. Should have known that.
Okay, one moment.
May I respond to that?
Councillors, can I unusually just intervene because I just want to be clear. I think we get the idea behind the amendment, but the officers here are uncomfortable with interpreting it. We think we know what you're after, but in order to get it more exact, our recommendation is that you pass the proposed ideas to the next meeting at the CRC. And we then follow, excuse me, we then follow with a vote on the proposal as amended by Councillor Scobie's amendment. So we have in place what we need for electronic voting after a vote this evening, but the amendment proposed by Councillor Crittenden is taken to the next CRC and comes back to the following council for a decision to amend what we will be agreeing this evening. Does that make any sense? It would just help. We're not comfortable with interpreting. I take the point that Councillor Scobie was making, which is you get the message, but it would be easier to make sure we had wording which we were comfortable with, which reflected what Councillor Crittenden is proposing. So if you're comfortable with that, Councillor Crittenden, and you're happy to have your amendment referred forward, assuming you are, then the proposal would be to ask Council to approve the main item as amended by Councillor Scobie previously.
Councillor Everett.
If I can make a suggestion, I believe that we will end up having an extraordinary council meeting in May to deal with the Margate Town Council. So that will be an opportunity to bring back whatever comes from the Constitution Review Committee rather than waiting until July. And that might assist.
And at that stage, we could put the amendment in writing and Council would be able to see it and understand what it's voting on. Yeah.
Councillor Crittenden, are you happy with that?
I feel like I don't have a lot of choice.
Well said.
And I will, while I've got the microphone on, say my apologies for not sending this in before, but actually I only read the report this afternoon, so I only read it and went eek when I saw it. So yeah, okay.
Thank you. Okay. I would like, bearing in mind it's 26 minutes past 10, I'd like to go to vote on Councillor Scobie's, no, on the amended, yeah, he's just told me that, on the amended motion. Thank you. Can we do that, please? Those in favour, quick. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
And those against? Hurrah! Any abstentions?
That's carried.
Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Can we Committees, panels and boards, proportionality. I move that the recommendations set out in the report be adopted. With the Vice Chair please second.
Seconded.
Do councillors agree? Thank you. Nomination of members to serve on committees. Group leaders may wish to take this opportunity to advise of changes to their nominations to committees, panels and boards for the remainder of 26-27. Councillor Everett, do you wish to advise of any nomination changes?
I do, Chair, thank you. Councillor Faruqi to come off overview and scrutiny, Councillor Green to come off planning, and Councillor Green to go on governance and audit.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, do you wish to advise on any nomination changes?
I do, Chair. Thank you very much. I'd like to advise that Councillor Rees-Pugh will be coming off of constitutional review and Councillor Emma Dawson off of general purposes. And I believe that completes the voting for the Ramsgate judges.
Thank you. Councillor Austin, do you wish to advise of any nomination changes? Councillor Manners, do you wish to advise of any nomination changes?
Only as advised to Nick last week.
Thank you very much. That concludes this meeting. Good night.